Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World opened in 2003. An epic action drama set during the Napoleonic Wars, the film is an adaptation of Patrick O'Brian's Aubrey Maturin book series and has grown to be regarded a cult classic. My name's John, and the couple of wily old sea dogs with me are Matt.
Name a shrub after me, something prickly and hard to eradicate.
And Westy.
That's seamanship, Mr. Pullings. My God, that's seamanship.
It's 1805 and all the right movies are in the East Pacific to talk stoicism, seamanship and the HMS Surprise. But first, lads, beat the quarters. Hello and welcome to All the Right Movies, Masters at Arms, Men of War, and a podcast on classic and hit films.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
This time out, we're sailing the seven seas.
We are. Yeah.
It's Napoleonic era naval warfare as we talk Peter Weir, Russell Crowe, and their huge period film, Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World.
Indeed.
Long title, that.
Yeah, very long.
Too long.
A Charlie Kaufman title.
A really necessary call-up.
Before we find our sea legs, though, a quick word about Patreon, surely?
Yeah, why not?
So, if you listen regularly to our ATRM classic podcasts, and if you're listening to Master and Commander, I'm guessing you listen to anything that we do.
Yeah.
You can help support what we do by becoming an ATRM patron. Patrons get access to our monthly bonus podcast episode called Double Feature and access to our entire archive of bonus episodes and ATRM classic episodes.
Yep.
There's hundreds of hours worth of podcasts in there now. So if you like Russell Crowe, we've got Gladiator and LA Confidential.
We do.
We have.
If Peter Weir is your kind of filmmaker, we've talked about Witness.
Yes.
We did indeed.
Lots more too, so a treasure trove as deep as Davy Jones' locker there, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Get the bends going into all that.
Always with the Radiohead references.
Every time I can. I don't let you down. There's another one. I'm fitter and happier because of it.
Are you finished?
No, not by a long stretch.
So to find out more and sign up, please visit patreon.com/alltherightmovies. Or if you're an Apple Podcast user, you can subscribe directly on there now as well. Just click the subscribe button and you're away.
There you go. Easy as that.
As for now, though, the business at hand is Master and Commander.
It is.
Yes.
Your choice, this one, Matt. So why did you put it up?
Because this is one of those films where I think even though it won the poll, so it's obviously popular, it still feels underrated in a way and not known or seen by enough people. And we'll talk about this later, I think, but obviously there was another big seafaring adventure film that same year, another long title, another call-on. That one dominated the box office, but I think this one has thrived and people get really passionate about it when you mention it. I wouldn't go quite that far with it, but I am a big fan of Peter Weir in general. Russell Crowe is in his leading man prime here, and it does have this real old-fashioned sweep to it, which I really respond to. It's very grounded in the reality of that historical era, and there's some great behind-the-scenes stories to this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw this when it first came out, 2003. Bolden Cinema. You two guys, old stomping ground, Northeast England.
Yeah, we probably
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
Probably took your ticket.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw it, there was a fight broke out in my aisle because some guy had his foot on the guy in front seat. I was waiting for one of you two to steam in and break it up, but it never happened.
Absolutely not.
Was it not us two having the fight?
Well, maybe because of that, I didn't watch the film again until Matt suggested it like 20 years later, so I didn't remember it all that well, but I was pleased to do it because, I mean, the setting, I studied the Napoleonic Wars when I was a teenager and always found it a bit of a fascinating period.
By choice?
Yeah, by choice, yeah.
Wow. Okay. That explains a lot.
I mean, sailing around on huge wooden ships, like powered by wind, and firing lumps of metal at each other while shouting "Huzzah!" every 5 minutes is insane behaviour, but a great setting for a film.
Definitely.
And as well as the interesting history, we've got Peter Weir, director, Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany in the cast, so big names, based on classic novels as well, so loads to get stuck into. I mean, if we're talking Napoleonic warfare, It's no Sharp, obviously.
No,
What is?
No, come on, though.
But that is one hell of a high bar, that.
That is too high.
It is. Should have got Sean Bean in there. Bastards.
You bastard. So, let's do it.
Okay, you bastard.
And Westy, how about yourself and M&C TSFOTW? I got that wrong.
Oh, you got it wrong. I was like, all that studying out the window. Yeah, I mean, I'm brand new to this. This is quite rare for me. Matt put it up, and he put the poll up, and I said, I haven't seen that one. I secretly hoped it wouldn't win. I mean, I was put off by it. I think it was overshadowed, as we'll talk about, by Return of the King, which came out at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it suffered a lot for that. But I was really put off by his hair. I was put off by the title. It just sounded really fucking boring. You know what it sounds like? Do you know the games that you got free with your PC before the internet?
It does.
And it would just be like a little blip on a map, and you had to blow them up, and it was a shit game, and it was free. It sounds like Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. Like, I'm not fucking doing that.
Great art cover, but terrible game.
Really great, like massive, like Renaissance style painting, galleon. And that's how it felt like when I saw the poster. I thought, oh, that's just like, it looks really boring and really kind of up its own arse. And now that I've watched it, there's so much duality in the film, isn't there? There's like man versus nature, Aubrey versus Moon. There's like science versus war. And there's loads of this duality. There's all these twos all the way through the film. And the title kind of lets it down. It should have just been called Surprise, Surprise. I would have been in there. A lot to talk about. Like Matt said, lots of good behind the scenes stuff, lots of things that people might not know about. And this film is loved. If people like this film, they don't just like it, they adore this film. And there's no middle ground. So am I in the middle? Am I one that thinks this is just a canny film, or did I really enjoy it? Let's find out.
Yeah, let's. So, Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. I'm not calling it that all the way through, by the way. Just Master and Commander from now on. It was produced by Miramax Films, Universal Pictures and Samuel Goldwyn Films, distributed by 20th Century Fox, and released on November the 14th, 2003.
Yeah.
Filmed on location in the Galapagos Islands and Rosarito Beach in Baja, Mexico. It was written by Peter Weir and John Colley, directed by Weir, and it stars Russell Crowe as Captain Jack Aubrey, Paul Bettany as Dr. Stephen Maturin, and a host of British TV actors, some of whom we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Let's get in there then, should we?
Let's do it.
Time to run like smoke and oakum. We're talking the beginning of Master and Commander.
The beginning.
April 1805. Napoleon is master of Europe. Oceans are now battlefields, and a series of title cards reveal our plot. The HMS Surprise, captained by Jack Aubrey, has new admiralty orders. Incept the French privateer vessel Acheron in the Pacific and sink, burn, or take her as a prize.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
So the opening scenes of Master and Commander are straight into the action. We meet Captain Jack and his crew as they search for the Phantom vessel. It's thick fog though, and the Acheron pounces in a preemptive strike.
Yeah.
So, Westy, what's the butcher's bill?
What's the butcher's? Great line, that, isn't it? I'd love to be able to use that, but I never want to. Do you know what I mean? It's a fantastic opening. It's exactly what you expect. Them titles are big. Wow, all right, Peter. Fucking oceans of battlegrounds. All right. Focus on what we're trying to tell you, because we've put so much work into this, so much effort into this. It is just to the letter so authentic, and I don't know how many times I'm going to use that word during this whole podcast.
I've got it in mind for you as well.
That's probably going to be like more than Matt used sick in Texas Chainsaw. I think we might break it. And Hallam's looking through the telescope, and you see that little glimpse. That's so beautifully done, because you see it, but you don't know if you have.
Yeah.
And you just, I've seen something, but what was it? And then it's a hell of a wake-up call. What an introduction to the character of Jack, when he's just, it's like Commando, isn't it? Belt is tied. Boom, 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 boom. And then I'm like, oh, there he is. Oh, there's his hair. It's in a fucking ponytail. Oh, God. Oh, my God, the last 2.5 hours. The sound design, when this boots off, is just incredible. The sound just rips through everything, which we'll get into. But it's just so engaging from the start. I expected this to be a really slow build. It's going to start in the port. You're going to see them all get on the boat. Then they're going to go right. You're dropped right in the middle of the action, like you said, John. You're just automatically part of everything, and you want to fight with them, and you want to kind of go through it all with them. And that's how good Peter Weir is just recognising humanity and companionship, and how good people feed off each other. And he does it from minute one. And when them cannons fire, I almost just dove off the settee with everyone else. I was like, ah, right, get down. I was like, oh shit, Russell Crowe's telling us to get down. I have to get down. That's how engaging it is and how authentic it is and how much you are pulled into this film immediately. I think it's just an excellent, excellent opening of the film, and it just makes you want to sit and go, yeah, I'm ready for 2 hours of this.
Yeah, those first shots, we don't start with like music playing over the titles like you might normally do. We see and hear like nighttime waves, and then we're aboard the ship with just a bell ringing and the hull like creaking. Weir sets a really specific tone straight away, and I think he does it really well. And in those first shots that go around the ship, we see the cannons that are called like Jumping Billy and Sudden Death. Yeah. Those names are taken from the books, so a good way for Weir to let fans of the novels know, don't worry, we have actually read them, which is always a good way to start.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great build-up to the battle. Midshipman Holland's on watch, thinks he spots something but can't decide what to do, raises the tension, and also sets up Holland for his subplot later on, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. All the way through,
Yeah, and then Captain Jack, Russell Crowe, just strides out on the deck, bold as brass with that golden mane. It's outrageous. Russell Crowe, Maximus, I've got this on my head now. I'm not even going to mention it. It's just in there.
Deal with it. Just give us a telescope and I'll just hold it out like a shotgun. I've never seen anyone so threatening with a telescope in my fucking life.
He's terrifying.
He is.
But it's a good setup of Jack as a character. He's reasonable and fair with Holland, even though he's a bit of a douchebag, is Holland. Yeah. And his instant reaction when he sees the gunfire in the fog lets us know that he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And when the action comes, excellent. It's carnage as cannonballs like rip through the hull of the Surprise.
Brilliant.
There's a definite Saving Private Ryan influence when Jack goes down and it all goes slow motion for a few seconds and then kicks back in.
Very much.
Yeah, and the sound design drops and he's kind of, it's got that vibe to it, yeah, definitely.
I would say it's not totally clear at all times to me where the ships are in relation to each other. That may be the intention, though.
Yeah, I think so.
To make us as disoriented as the Surprise is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not quite Saving Private Ryan, but a very good action opener.
But you know that bit that you've just kind of compared to Saving Private Ryan, and he's on the ground and he gets up and he's like, his throat's knacking him, and then he screams and he's up to his feet and he just runs forward and grabs the telescope again. He doesn't go get a gun and stuff. He's just like, this is what I need to do. He should just do like a remake of Rear Window with him like that with the telescope.
I'd be terrified.
Really threatening.
He'd be the bad guy.
He would be just saying he'd see a murder and be like, you there! Clap him in irons.
There's this real like painterly quality to it throughout, which I love. That shot of the Surprise just sailing towards the fog bank, and then that one of the two ships side by side just blasting away at each other. They could be portraits. So it looks incredible, the sound and chaos of it. I love those shots of the cannonballs ripping through the sails.
Yeah.
And then Stephen, without a word of introduction, just unveiling all those surgical instruments. Like, right, this is going to be bad. People are going to get seriously hurt here. And it's this sense that to gain victory, you've got to get ridiculously close to the other ship and just hope you don't get blown to smithereens first.
Yeah.
But then it does get balanced out slightly with the tactical nature of it, having to sail into the fog and keeping dead silent. That's the only way to get out of it. So, it's a great opening because it just sets up characters and everything you're going to need to know going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, just shoot the hell out of each other and see who's left standing at the end of it.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
To create the Acheron for the film, the production design team, led by William Sandell and Robert Gould, based it on the USS Constitution, a real ship launched in 1797. She was designed to be small enough to be fast, have a 2 feet thick hull, and carry more guns than ships of the same size, which is how Aubrey describes the Acheron.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Constitution was famous for a battle it won against a British ship called the Guerriere in 1812. And the Constitution is still an officially commissioned US warship to this day.
Imagine that.
She's a beauty, but I wouldn't fancy going to war on her nowadays. Wouldn't last 5 minutes.
Yeah, so the Acheron was fictional, but the HMS Surprise, that is a real ship from 1796. And it was made by the French, but captured by the British, who then renamed it Surprise. And the ship in the film was originally built in 1970 as a replica of a 1757 ship called the HMS Rose. And 20th Century Fox bought the Rose for this film for $1.5 million. And it was then modified to match the real Surprise. And that took 3.5 months to do.
Wow.
Yeah. Expensive ship.
Yeah.
I mean, Surprise is a terrible name for a ship.
It's rubbish.
It's rubbish, isn't it?
And since the film wrapped, the Surprise has been on display at the San Diego Maritime Museum, and it was also used in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides.
Yeah, of course it was.
Ah,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Had the budget for it, $500 million.
Yeah.
And the experts at that museum said the production design team's work on the Surprise is unmatched in its authenticity and attention to detail.
There you are.
And you can book a narrated cruise on the Surprise for $42 as well.
Cruise, is it like go around?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you go out on
How
it.
much?
Yeah.
$42?
It's a
That's
bargain.
worth it.
Let's go.
That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Aye.
Next Christmas due.
Next Christmas.
So that's the intro to the film, an action-packed opener. Should we learn more about what goes on inside the Surprise?
Why not? Let's go.
Let's do it.
After being given a bit of a battering, the crew of the Surprise assume they're headed for home, but Jack has other ideas, ordering a refit at sea so the pursuit can continue.
That's mental.
It's insane. In the scenes that follow, we get to know the crew a bit better at a shipman's dinner, and after the Surprise is caught in a storm off Cape Horn, Jack is forced to leave a crew member behind to drown.
Yeah.
To wives and sweethearts, may they never meet. Mm-hmm. That's your favourite saying, Matt, isn't it?
It is, because that would definitely be anarchy if those two got together. So definitely keep those apart. I'm going to talk about that dinner scene though, because what I love about this scene is it just shows you nothing changes. Like hundreds of years ago, you get all the lads together, they have a few drinks, and out come all the same old stories they've been told so many times.
Yeah.
All the crap jokes come out as well. But you've had a few, so everyone thinks it's hilarious. It's just totally lads being lads back in the day.
They should have done a podcast, shouldn't they?
They should have done. But, like, can you imagine being back then, though, and seeing two weevils on your food and just being like, yeah, that's fine. Grubs crawling all over my food. I'm not going to freak out about that in the slightest.
Not really.
Absolutely disgusting. I just empathise with Stephen in this scene so much, though. Like, he knows he's being set up for something here with this question about the weevils. He knows it isn't a serious question. Well, then, if you're going to push me, only to get that punchline thrown in his face. John, it's like when me and Westy sat here and we know you're lining up some joke. We know it's coming and there's nothing we can do to stop it.
Yeah, he's going to steamroller over it. No, for a fact.
Yes.
I didn't know what a weevil was. It took us my third watch of this to go, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, this dinner, we get to meet and know the crew a bit better, so it's important. But some of the banter, inverted commas, Jack's joke about the weevils is abysmal.
It is.
It's abysmal.
Do you know who loves it the most? Jack.
He loves it.
Yeah, loves his own
How
jokes.
smug is Crowe's delivery? The lesser of two weevils. It's awful. And his Lord Nelson anecdote about passing the salt isn't much better.
No.
The second one about Nelson not needing a cloak does work, as it defines the kind of values the men have. Nelson's zeal for king and country kept him warm. Which reminds me of you, Westy. Your zeal for king and country keeps you warm, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
But the guys love Nelson nearly as much as they love a sing-song.
Oh, they love
Belting out the sea shanties. I do like the Sing Spanish Ladies, which Quint also sings in Jaws,
Yeah,
doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine him in there, drinking cans, getting his scars out.
Yeah.
Telling massive stories.
Arm wrestling everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good scene in that it's important in establishing the kind of characters the men are, but the execution of some of the gags could have been a bit better for me.
Right, that's fair enough. We did mention the toast, and the film never tells us. But if you know your naval history, you'd know what day this scene takes place on. The toast Aubrey gives to wives and sweethearts, may they never meet. That was the traditional toast for Saturdays in the Royal Navy.
Ah, right.
And for Matt as well.
Yep. Matterdays.
Matterday night's all right for fighting.
There it is.
Wow. And we see a portrait in Jack's quarters of a woman who we assume is either the wife or sweetheart. And that was created for the film, but is based on Eliza Izzard, which is a real miniature portrait by Edward Green Malbone from 1801.
Right, nice.
Yeah. Again, authentic.
Not Eddie Izzard, thankfully.
Eddie Izzard.
No.
Dragon.
Yeah, it's a pretty well-known painting, apparently. We also see a letter written by Jack addressed to somebody called Sophie. And in the book, Sophie's the name of Jack's first ship, so that's where they got that name from. Here, it's his wife, presumably.
Okay, he's not writing a letter to a ship, is he?
I was going to say, wouldn't surprise me if he wants the way he talks about the surprise.
She's in her prime. Love that.
She's bluff.
I'm going to go for the first bit of real peril in the film. like peril where you think, okay, we're on side, Jack's got a hold of this, he knows exactly what he's doing, we're really with him. And then all of a sudden, this storm comes in, and this is the first time that we really explore this duality. And he's already said the joke that we've talked about, the lesser of two weevils, which is meant to be lesser of two evils. And this is the first time he has to make that decision, and he does it all the way through the film.
Yeah.
So you let one man go, or does the whole crew go down?
Yeah.
And not a second of this feels safe at all. I mean, the continuity and the editing's just outrageous, the way that this is just so visceral and just so real. And there's such a conflict of emotions. At one hand, it's one after the other in the dialogue. Now it's an anchor, it's pulling us down. And then the next bit of dialogue is, he's going to make it, he's going to be all right. It's just so good. And the fact that, like, there's not one bit of water gets on the lens. Nothing hits the camera. And you're like, how on earth is that possible? You're never ever brought out of that world. You don't feel like you're watching this through a camera. You feel like you're watching it through your own eyes. And this bit you really experience. You're like, swim back. Who's swimming in that?
I know. Michael Phelps.
Butterfly. But again, I mean, it's just such a brilliant moment in the film where you realise that maybe Jack's not in control of everything. Maybe his ambition is going to be the downfall here. So it kind of puts you on the back foot. It's a really, really pivotal scene and really important.
Yeah, I think this might be the best action scene in the film, for me. The guy who Jack cuts loose.
What do you think?
Yeah, possibly. William Worley, he's called. He's set up earlier. He's the guy who creates the model of the Acheron and gives it to Jack, so we know him. And it's a classic moment from a film set at sea, I think, the having to leave somebody behind to drown. Bit of a trope, but I think they do it really well. The effects work on the shot of the mast as it collapses into the ocean, taking Worley with it. That's excellent.
That's seamless, isn't it?
Yeah, really good. And it is genuinely sad, that shot of Worley just in the waves as he watches the Surprise sail away. What an awful way to go that is.
Yeah,
I know,
it's
right?
horrible.
Beautifully shot, and setting it at night mixes up the visuals really well. It's a great sequence for me.
And makes it harder to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's got to be authentic. This end of night, okay, fine, shit.
And those effects for the storm, they were a combination of practical and digital effects, which were handled by ILM. And the effects supervisor, Stefan Fangmeier, said we told him their work had to be invisible and the best on-screen storm ever created.
No pressure then.
No pressure.
I
was gonna say, wow.
Yeah, Stefan Fangmeier was hired to oversee things because he'd worked on The Perfect Storm in 2000,
Right.
which is some pretty good experience when you want to create a storm,
Yes.
I think.
Thankfully, we don't have that superimposed face at the end of this. Oh, God.
And then the ship, that was in a tank on a gimbal to make it rock as if in motion. And they dumped 8,000 gallons of water from tanks onto the ship and used wave and wind machines to create a storm effect. And they also used real footage, and that was from a storm filmed at Cape Horn by a natural history cinematographer called Paul Atkins. And he had filmed a round-the-world trip on a replica of Captain Cook's ship, which was the HMS Endeavour.
Wow.
Right. Better name.
Yeah, definitely. A bit unoriginal, if they call it that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, Paul Atkins was brought in by Weir, and he served as a DP when they shot this storm sequence.
Yeah.
Right.
And ILM did the CGI work as well, like when the mast snaps. I suspect that's why they probably set it at night, quite early CGI, so that blends the footage together probably a bit more easily, I would guess. I think it works really well. Looks great.
Oh, it does. I mean, I couldn't tell. 3-4 times watching it, I'm still finding it hard to differentiate between the practical and the digital effects, and that's the best way to use them, I think, yeah.
Absolutely. And that is the beginning of Master and Commander. Naval warfare, tragic deaths, sing-alongs, and huge effect sequences. It seems to have it all so far.
Yep, we've only just started.
Terrible jokes as well.
Yeah, don't forget that.
The director.
The director of Master and Commander was Peter Weir. A leading figure of the Australian New Wave movement of the 70s and 80s, Weir also had a number of well-known Hollywood films under his belt at this point, including Witness, Dead Poet Society, and The Truman Show.
Yeah.
A very experienced head by this point then, Matt. How is Peter Weir's direction on Master and Commander?
I think it's excellent, and I think it's what Peter Weir does best. He creates worlds, and he takes his ego out of the equation and makes every choice the right choice to serve the story. It's like in Witness, the most thrilling sequence in that film is when they build a barn, and that sounds ridiculous.
That's true, yeah.
But it's right for that film.
You love Weir, like.
I do love Weir.
absolutely
I just love the
love
vibe he brings. Just love the vibe he brings.
You do so much.
I really do. And I think Master Commander has so many right choices in a similar way. It's not back-to-back action sequences because that's not what it was like back then. It was a long, tiring journey, months, if not years at sea. And I think Weir paces it to get that across. Like when the Surprise is being pursued by the Acheron, it obviously can't be a high-speed pursuit, but disguising that smaller board as a distraction to throw the Acheron off the scent. Again, Weir understands, well, that's what they would do, and he makes that sequence really work. And little touches like the fact that the camera does tilt side to side ever so subtly on the Surprise. Not so much that it's distracting and actually makes you seasick, but enough so that you don't look at it and go, well, the camera is so level and still they're clearly not at sea. It's just a little touch, but it serves the story. So it does have these big action sequences, but it's all the little touches along the way that build this world. Like, as we've said, Pirates of the Caribbean came out the same year as this, which is a really fun film, but only one of those films feels like a real journey back in time. And it's this one, and I think that's to Weir's credit that it does feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why the studio were keen on Weir directing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
When he was younger, he'd spent 5 weeks out at sea himself, so he had some real experience.
Okay.
He'd made a classic book adaptation in Picnic at Hanging Rock already. He'd made a classic war drama in Gallipoli, and he already had big Hollywood successes, like we mentioned, and Green Card as well.
Yeah,
well, it pays off because directing-wise, this feels like a film in very safe hands. There's some big effects-led action scenes here, and they're spectacular and well put together. There's some character drama. Weir handles that really well too. It looks beautiful. We'll talk about that more when we get to the DP, Russell Boyd, in the crew section. The work from the costume and design departments is brilliant too. Lots of very different skill sets on this film, all delivering great work, and the thread that links them all is Peter Weir. He's overseeing everything and does all of it successfully. It feels like an accurate depiction of early 19th century naval life. I mean, I don't know for sure, I wasn't there, but it feels authentic.
Yeah, but I mean, you know better than we do. You studied it.
Yeah, we'll take your word for it, John.
But I feel pulled into the world. I think period films can sometimes be a tough setting for a film to connect with an audience, like Barry Lyndon or Age of Innocence or classics, but both among the least loved Kubrick and Scorsese films, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Weir doesn't seem to have that problem, though. This is engaging, and he builds the world in a way that I think most people can relate to.
Yeah.
Which, when you're making a film with a $150 million budget, you kind of have to do. So,
Definitely.
yeah, it doesn't quite come up to the Truman Show as my favourite Peter Weir, but Master and Commander, I think, is a top-quality director in action, for me.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. And like you said there, John, with period pieces, people automatically just take that as a given, right? It's a period piece, so that's it. It's a character in itself. I don't really have to do much work because you understand the history and I'll just put them in that costume and then that's it. But I think what Weir did is he just went deeper with that. And I'm going to mention authenticity again, and I'm going to mention it again and again and again. But it just feels like everyone's on the same page. It feels like everyone's turning around and looking at Peter Weir going, what do you want us to do? And I will do it. He's just got some of the best performances out of some of these actors. I mean, everyone's totally believable in their role. And I think there's a lot of respect for Peter Weir and how real he wants to make it. And he doesn't just want to make it a period drama. He wants to make it almost like a documentary in a really grand scale of things with a story and an emotion behind it. It's the realism is just as important as the narrative, and everything works to that degree. It just gives me a headache to think of how much thought and effort went into every single aspect of this.
The attention to detail is insane.
It's mind-blowing. You could punch in on a close-up in any one of these shots and you're not making any mistakes. You could spin the camera around 360 degrees and you're not seeing anything that takes you out of that world. It's just done so well. You're inspired by the film, and I honestly think because of Peter Weir directing this is why people adore this film. You know, the amount you put into something is what you can take away from it, and I think he's just poured a lot of his soul into this, and people walk away from this going, I've seen something really special, and that's down to Peter Weir.
Well, the person with the original idea to adapt Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series into films wasn't Peter Weir, it was Tom Rothman. He was an executive at 20th Century Fox, and when he became chairman and CEO, he immediately put forward the idea of adapting these books.
Okay.
Do you know much about that?
No.
Yeah, when Rothman worked at the Samuel Goldwyn Company in the mid-90s, he tried to get Master and Commander off the ground as an adaptation, and he had wanted Weir to direct, but he'd said no. And then in 2000, Weir came into the Fox studios to talk about what projects they might have for him, and Rothman pitched the idea again, and he gave Weir a mock captain's sword and said, "What I think you should do is take command of the Surprise."
Bit cheesy from Rothman, that, isn't it?
Really cheesy.
He fitted well at the shipman's dinner with that sort of banter.
Little plastic
Got the sword and everything.
Well, Weir did say he would do it this time on some conditions. First, he said the studio had to buy the HMS Rose that we talked about and refit it as the Surprise. A bit demanding.
Yeah, just a bit.
Second, he said they had to base the script on the 10th book in the series, not the first one. And he said he wanted to keep the sword the Rothman gave him. He said yes, which you kind of have to after giving him that speech.
Well, yeah, you can't dig it back, can you? I'll have it back, please. No.
So, as we've mentioned, we wanted the film to be as authentic as possible to what life would have been like on a 19th century man of war. The costume designer was Wendy Stites, Peter Weir's wife.
Yeah.
She won an Oscar for the film, and her team made 2,000 costumes, 2,000 hats, 1,900 pairs of shoes, 400 pounds of hair for the actors to wear. That's just Russell Crowe's wig. And they brought in a watch company called Breguet, who have been around since 1775, and they made all the watches for the actors, the actual kind of period pieces.
Yeah, authentic is the word.
It is, definitely.
I know as well that when Weir was researching for the film, he studied lots of paintings of the time, and that made him want to find people with 18th century faces, as he put it.
Just weathered them.
And he gave Mary Selway, the casting director, these paintings and photographs of fishermen from the 1840s, and he said, find people for the crew who look like this.
Wow.
And they needed 130 people to man the Surprise, and she saw over 7,000 people. A lot of work.
Should have just come to, like, South Shields. Everyone looks like that.
Got a couple of boats there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is my favourite bit. The production team made about 27 miles of rope for the rigging on the Surprise. But most of the rope had to be made, especially because on modern rope, the strands have a right-hand lay. Back in the early 1800s, it would have had a left-hand lay.
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Who's going to know that?
Yeah, you can't notice. I was thinking the second time watching this, that's a left-hand lay, that.
Just for you, Westy.
Big fan of rope. We are also brought in a guy called Andy Ray Ellers to be on hand through the shoot as sailing master. He'd worked on refitting the HMS Rose after Fox bought it, and we wanted him there as, like, give technical advice, you know, how to train the crew and how to basically be the crew on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that his role kind of evolved and everybody would come up to him with questions during the shoot. He said that Russell Crowe would examine every word in the script and ask for advice on, like, how to deliver certain words or who he should say to in the crew.
Right.
Lots of shouting, huzzah, went on, it seems. But that all works because, I mean, in terms of how real it seems, it just stands up so well, I think, the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, 170 people though asking you questions every fucking 2 seconds. Andrew Ellis must have been like, I'm just going to grab a cannonball and fucking dive over the side.
Well, Master and Commander was nominated for 10 awards at the Oscars, including Best Director and Best Picture.
Yeah.
Lost out to both for the same film. You remember what?
Return of the King.
Peter Jackson for Director and The Lord of the Rings Return of the King for Best Picture.
Yeah.
For us, though, some impressive work from Peter Weir and Master and Commander as Director.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
Very much so, yeah.
The cast.
There's a large cast in Master and Commander, mostly comprising the HMS Surprise ranking officers and enlisted sailors, or foremost jacks. Mm-hmm. It's a big old crew, and we're going into detail on our 2 leads.
Okay.
One of those is Paul Bettany as Ship Surgeon Dr. Stephen Maturin. We're starting with the Master and Commander himself, though.
We are.
Westy.
Don't put me in charge of anything.
So Ian West plays Captain Jack Aubrey. Russell Crowe plays Captain Jack Aubrey. Lucky Jack to some.
Huzzah!
Captain of the Surprise, he leads us through most of the narrative, taking the mission to catch the Acheron personally, having 1 or 2 fallouts with Stephen, and ultimately capturing the French vessel. And he's like Vanessa May on that fiddle, Westy.
Oh, beautiful, isn't he?
How is Russell Crowe as Lucky Jack?
He's great, isn't he? He's such a demanding presence on screen. It's just so believable. Fills the screen with just this huge ego and this huge confidence. And he is the authenticity that I've been talking about. He just absolutely owns the role. He lives it. And he's absolutely into it. You can tell he's into it. To wear that V-neck and to pull that off with that chest in, just with that, you know, that command. Imagine that. Impossible. But he does it, like, and you take him seriously at the same time. But when he gives somebody a compliment, you feel warm. When he doesn't have a go at Holland at the start and he says you did the right thing, you feel completely relieved because he just commands respect. And I think Russell Crowe at this point was just so good at that. You can tell he's bonded the whole crew. He got everybody together. They visited the set. They visited the ship. They got everybody involved and he was just part of everything. He just gives everyone space and he's just so kind, I think, in this film as an actor. And you watch him and you just think, wow, that's just so, like, genuine. It's genuinely good. There's none of this is hammy. None of it. I mean, some of the lines, you've just been like, get back to your sexton. You'd be like, if anyone else said that, it's like they just wanted Russell Crowe to say sexton, let's be honest. And he does. With aplomb. Beautiful. But he just absolutely owns this role. And for every second he's off the screen, you want him on the screen. That's how good he is in this.
Yeah, I agree. I think Crowe is very good as Jack. I would say without quite hitting the heights of what we know he's capable of. I mean, we've just seen him as Maximus a couple of years before this, where he's massive.
But this character, though, he hits the heights of what this character needs.
Yeah.
He's not massively heroic going it by himself. He needs to be part of a crew, and he is that. He's like a leader.
Yeah, he is. I think my favourite moments of his here are the parts where we see him as Jack Aubrey, the man. That mostly comes in the scenes with Stephen as their friends.
Yeah.
Particularly the 2 or 3 times they clash kind of ideologically and argue about the best course of action to take.
Yeah.
We'll talk about those scenes a bit more shortly, but I think Crowe's really good in those. Where I'm not a massive fan are the moments where he's playing like Lucky Jack, the captain of the ship. His persona is a bit different, which I like, but he's a touch theatrical at times for me. He's always like, well done, lads, extra ration of grog for all of you.
That's great, that, though. I love that.
Do you know what grog is, by the way?
Booze, innit?
Well, yes.
I don't mind as long as it's booze.
It's watered down rum, which doesn't sound too
right.
nice.
No, it doesn't, does it? Yeah.
I think Jack and Maximus have a lot of similarities. I mean, Jack's not in quite as good nick as a Spaniard, is he?
No.
Definitely not.
Jaximus.
Crowe looks like he'd just be on tour with his band. 30-odd foot of grunts, remember them?
30-odd foot of grunts. Jesus Christ, yeah.
But Jack and Maximus are both stoic, brave, both reasonable, got a strong sense of duty. But what Jack's missing that we do get with Maximus for me, I think, is vulnerability. We see Maximus break down in tears at one point in Gladiator. We don't need that necessarily, but there could be some kind of arc or learning. I mean, Jack gives advice to Holland about how to deal with the foremost Jacks, which is clearly terrible advice, because within minutes, Holland's thrown himself off the ship. But we don't see any real remorse or even acknowledgement from Jack that he had the chance to save Holland, but didn't.
Yeah.
I would have liked it if Jack had learned from that and used that new learning, whatever it was, in defeating the Acheron. I mean, there's your arc. But in terms of Crowe's performance, aside from the blonde ponytail, which I could do without, he is stoic, smart, he is a leader, which I think, you're right, Westy, is everything the script calls for, really.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Saving Private Ryan earlier on. I think he could have learned something from that. Like when after Wade's death, you know, when you see Hank's breakdown, he needs something like that just to be like, right, okay. Yeah, I get that there, definitely.
I think he's just got the natural authority this kind of role needs, doesn't he? Like the man who has to lead everyone else into potential death, but they'll follow him anyway and do anything he says. And because he has that natural authority, he can pull off that hair. I think he gets away with it. He doesn't care that he's packed on a bit of timber for this role. He doesn't have to look great because he is great. That just comes from within. There's not many actors, I think, could pull off that shot where he's at the top of the mast when they're pursuing the Acheron and the camera just pulls back and he's just standing there on it. And he doesn't look ridiculous. It's only Russell Crowe at this point in his career could pull that off.
And he is fucking beaming at that point. He smiles.
He loves it.
Huge. He's like, yes, I fucking love this.
He's having the best time ever. And, you know, I think the Maximus comparison is an interesting one, because what I would say about that is that Maximus in that film, his arc is fueled by quest for vengeance. Here, Jack is just doing his duty and he doesn't want to be outsmarted by the Acheron again, which is fine and it works for the film, but it's not as personally as engaging as what he gets to do with Maximus. But Crowe is just such a natural fit for this role. He takes you with him every step of the way.
Yeah. Crowe said he wasn't sure about the first drafts of the script, but it was the chance to work with Peter Weir that made him sign on to play Jack. In the books, Jack is described as being quite stout, which is why Crowe put the weight on for the role.
There's your real reason he signed on. No workout regimes for this one. Just get the band back together.
Exactly. Just have loads of McDonald's and look like I've got a melted Milky Bar on your head.
And speaking of Gladiator, actually, I know that Crowe had a mini break during production on Master and Commander, so he could fly to London for the funeral of Richard Harris.
Oh, Harris,
who played
yeah.
Marcus Aurelius in Gladiator.
Yeah, they were good friends, weren't they?
They were,
Yeah, great friends,
Yeah.
great drinkers.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the cast, they themselves, they spent 2 weeks in a boot camp before filming started, and that's where they learned how to sail, how to fire a pistol and a cannon, and how to fight with a cutlass. But Crowe turned up a few days before everyone else because he felt as captain he should know more than the crew. And he also spent 3 months learning to play a violin, and he called that the hardest thing he's ever had to do for a role.
Wow, those jamming sessions do look great. Legitimate, to be fair. They're both really good.
Yeah.
That is outrageous, calling them jamming sessions. Like, right, let's have a jam. Fiddly diddly diddly dee.
I've jammed with you before, Westy. You love out like that.
I know, but it's a little bit more intense than that, I'd like to say.
It is.
Jamming session. Crowe said that the first violin they gave him for the part was a German violin. He said Jack should play something more refined, but they had no budget for anything more expensive. So Richard Tognetti, one of the composers, tracked down a violin made by Leandro Bisiac in Milan in 1890, and Crowe paid for it himself. He said playing that specific violin is an extraordinary experience.
Well, he auctioned it in 2018 for $104,000.
Jesus. Should have played itself.
Very nice.
And during production, because so much of it was on water, they built a recreational field nearby, which is where the cast and crew could go to just let off some steam.
Mm-hmm.
And Crowe organised a game of rugby between the crew of the Surprise and the crew of the
Of course he
Akron.
did.
Of course
Yeah.
he did. And to no one's surprise, the Surprise won. I bet they fucking did.
Yeah, of course he did. He's absolutely tons of fun at this point. He's ploughing into everyone. I will have my vengeance.
Yeah, I saw some behind-the-scenes footage of the rugby match, and beforehand, Crowe did the haka. You know, the kind of war dance to the New Zealand
Just
rugby
by
team.
himself. Wow.
To everyone. His own team as well.
And for his performance as Jack Aubrey, Russell Crowe was nominated for a Golden Globe, and for us, not his very best maybe, but he is very good in the film.
Yes,
Everything
yes.
the role needs him to be, I think, and that's the most important thing.
Our second lead is Dr. Stephen Maturin, played by Paul Bettany.
Mm-hmm.
The surgeon aboard the Surprise. Stephen is a close friend of the captain, though often at loggerheads with him, performs surgery on himself, and has a love of natural history.
Yes.
We do not have time for his damned hobbies, though, Matt.
No, we don't.
What do you think of Dr. Stephen and Paul Bettany playing him?
I think he's brilliant. Stephen is such a key role because if it wasn't for him, I don't know how much he could take of Jack because he's so duty-bound, he's so focused on the job and pursuing the Akron at all costs. And it is a deliberate choice, but he can be infuriating. So you need someone like Stephen almost as the conscience on his shoulder. You need the character that can say to him, why are we doing this? Are you sure this is the right thing to do? Have you thought about doing this differently for the men? And I'll go back to the scene where they're talking about Nelson's zeal for king and country. It's a really important shot, but you get that reaction shot from Stephen where he's almost rolling his eyes at that idea because zeal to him means 9 men have been killed and he's had to amputate the arm of a 13-year-old boy. And Bettany sells all that cynicism and rationality beautifully, but it's always combined with that sense of knowing how much he and Jack trust each other despite these disagreements they have. Like, Stephen can say things to Jack no one else would dare to on that ship. And you get the sense Paul Bettany could probably say things to Russell Crowe no one else would dare to when they were making this. Like, you know, calm it down a bit, Russ, come on. And I think those, like, two performances, I think they just dovetail together so effectively, and I think Bettany is the real heart of this film. It's probably the best performance in the film, I think, for me.
Yeah, in the books, apparently. I've not read them, but in the books, Stephen's described as being 5'6", odd-looking and distorted, whatever that means.
Wow,
Right.
okay.
Where, I mean, Paul Bettany's 6'3" and a fairly handsome fella, but from what I've seen, even die-hard fans of the book don't question his casting, and I think that's just because he's excellent. I mean, he's a very good actor, always brings dramatic weight to a role, and I think he nails the part of Stephen. Stephen's the audience window into the world a lot of the time. He doesn't understand a lot of the naval terms like us, so when Jack or the crew are explaining things to Stephen, they explain them to us, really. So for him to be that kind of connection between the film and the audience, I think Stephen has to be likeable, and Bettany can do that in his sleep, to be honest.
Yeah.
He brings a great realism and a groundedness to the film, which I think is very much needed to counter the kind of pomposity and bravado of Jack. And I think he and Crowe work very well together, like I said. Stephen has kind of an arc, I think. Initially, he wants Jack to basically torpedo the whole mission so he can go iguana spotting, which was never going to happen. No. But by the end, he says, subject to the requirements of the service, when his trip's been cancelled. So he seems to have changed a bit. And he's a bloody quick worker, isn't he? When he's operating on Bettany at the start after that first battle, he saws his arm off in about 4 seconds. Off with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a word here that strikes me that neither of you guys said, which is...
You couldn't say authentic.
No, I'm not. Is that he's the humanity in this, the version of sense and intelligence. And Jack does have an intelligence, but it's very much based on conflict. Mm-hmm. Go straight at them. Don't have any tactics. That's what Nelson would do. Whereas Bettany is mature and is got that sense of intelligence of like, maybe we should use tactics here. Maybe you're just wrong. Maturin has the role that Jack can't do. He could do any other role on that ship, but he couldn't be the doctor because he doesn't have that humanity with people. He doesn't really know how to talk to the kid. He automatically mentions Nelson. He automatically mentions warfare.
He's really awkward around him, isn't he, when he's been injured?
He tells what he understands, which is just conflict. Whereas what Bettany brings to this is a real sense of that duality between the two, that real common sense, that lack of ego. And he plays it really well, and I think he knows what he's doing with it. There is nothing on this that is just over the top, and even when Jack's asking him and makes a fool out of him at the dinner table, nothing's then taken personally. It's just, okay, that's what he needs to do. He needs to make a fool out of me to make himself seem more intelligent. When in reality, Stephen's answer to that joke is factually perfect. It's so intelligent. I would have that one because of this. And he's like, no, we would do it's this, which is kind of what warfare is with medicine, isn't it? He wears some outrageous gear. That's not what I would wear on the Galapagos Islands. No. Not at all. Too many layers at some points. Ridiculous glasses, ridiculous guy. But he's the heart of the film. He's not the one that you notice, but he's the one that you need to add texture and depth and humanity.
So Paul Bettany is very good, but he wasn't a shoe-in for the part of Stephen, and a couple of other well-known actors were considered by Weir.
Okay.
Right.
Heath Ledger was one.
Right.
Oh, okay. And the other was Ray Fiennes.
Fiennes would have been good.
Yeah.
Both would have been very good, I'm sure, yeah. Crowe and Bettany had worked well together in A Beautiful Mind just before this, so I wonder how much of an impact that had on Weir casting Bettany.
Yeah.
And Bettany had been a member of the Sea Cadets when he was a kid.
Right.
And he said this is why he was one of the only members of the cast who didn't get seasick at all during production. And then, as part of his preparation for the part, he went to the Royal College of Surgeons in London to learn how to use 18th century medical instruments. And before filming, Bettany and Crowe visited the HMS Victory in Portsmouth, because that's a real 18th century ship.
Wow. 18th century medical instruments, and they just gave him a cello. No. The knives and that. No.
Yeah, the Victory was Nelson's ship in the Battle of Trafalgar. And apparently on that visit to the Victory, Crowe turned up with the rest of his band as well. Absolute carnage.
He loves that one, like. He loves that one.
Beer and burgers everywhere.
Yeah. And Matt mentioned the field where the cast and crew played rugby, but something that was created just for the cast was a special club. There was like an outhouse that had a pool table, internet and some drinks. It was nicknamed the Monkey Bar on set.
And yeah, apparently Crowe brought in some guitars and a drum kit as well.
Of course he fucking did. And the rest of the band.
This is just a big jolly for Crowe, isn't it?
It is, like. Absolutely loving it. And pile on the beef and just rip out the country songs.
Before we finish on Paul Bettany, it's time for our first ATRM Patreon question.
Okay.
So one of the benefits of signing up as an ATRM Patreon is that we'll answer your questions on the show, and we have one now on Paul Bettany.
Okay.
Right.
So Gary Proctor.
Hello, Gary.
He's asked, what are your views on Paul Bettany? Is he better as a supporting actor, i.e. A Beautiful Mind, A Knight's Tale, MCU films Master and Commander, or as a leading actor, i.e. Wimbledon, Priest, Legion, or Gangster Number 1?
Right.
What do you think, Matt?
Well, I always enjoy a Paul Bettany performance, but I think he does have a career where it feels like he's never found the leading role that could propel him to being an absolute star. The star that he probably should be, to be fair. So I would say I do think his best roles are in support because, you got this. We've just mentioned A Beautiful Mind. I think he's a real standout in that.
He is, yeah.
You can tell, I think that's where that friendship with Crowe did start. And we did mention it, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so I can't make any claim whether it's any good or not, but I do remember thinking he was really funny in A Knight's Tale where he plays
Yeah.
Chaucer.
Yes.
Good film.
But yeah, when it comes to leading roles, I do struggle to think of one from him. So and that's not a reflection on him. I just don't think someone's used him right yet in a leading role.
Yeah. I mean, the examples given there, A Beautiful Mind, the MCU, and Master and Commander in supporting roles versus Wimbledon and Priest as the lead.
Yeah.
I think Gary's kind of answered his own question, to be honest.
He kind of has. I bet he was typing that out going, yeah.
Yeah, Wimbledon.
I mean, yeah, I do think Paul Bettany's a very good actor, but I'm not sure he has the presence to lead huge films. He's not Russell Crowe, is he?
No.
I do like him in Journey's End as well, the World War One drama, and he's a pretty good bad guy.
Yeah.
And Solo, the Star Wars story, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
he was,
yeah, nice.
I mean,
yeah.
being pretty good in a Star Wars film nowadays is no mean feat. So yeah, I do prefer him in supporting roles for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to agree. I saw this question, it was like, in the MCU, I was like, MCU? Like, I'm not that out of touch with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who the fuck's he, an Iron Man? I was like, oh, I'm going to have a look at this. But he's the voice of the computer, right?
And he's Vision as well.
Yeah, right, okay. But for me, the standout performance is the Da Vinci Code. He makes that film actually legible.
Oh, yeah.
Silas.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, somebody's taking this seriously. Thank
Yeah.
fuck for that.
Yeah.
Because I love that book. If it hadn't been for Bettany in that film, it would have been an absolute cartoon.
Yeah.
But he really kind of grounds it and makes it into something, and that's my most memorable performance is Da Vinci Code and A Beautiful Mind. I don't think I've seen any of the films that he's been a leading man in. Watching a film called Wimbledon, for me, is an absolute impossibility. I wouldn't watch Wimbledon, the actual sporting event. So for me, 100% supporting actor, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, for his performance as Stephen Maturin, Paul Bettany was nominated for a BAFTA, and for us, a very good supporting turn from him.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
There is a much wider cast too, of course. We'll talk more about Lee Ingleby as Holland and Max Purkis as Blakeney, but also anybody who watches British TV will be familiar with the faces of James Darcy as Pullings, Robert Pugh as Alan, David Threlfall as Killick, Max Bennett as Calamy, and Billy Boyd as Bondon. And our two leads, Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany, they carry things well.
Oh,
they
definitely.
Really do. Yeah.
100%.
All the Right Movies will be back shortly. In the meantime, thank you for supporting us by listening to this episode's sponsors. As you might expect, here at ATRM we watch a lot of movies. A lot of movies. And a lot of TV shows. And major sporting events. And we couldn't do almost all of it without NordVPN. I was desperate to watch the season finale of The Americans, but it wasn't available in my region. I used NordVPN to switch regions to the US, and hey presto, I got it on Hulu. It streams brilliantly from Netflix too. The quality's seamless, but it works great with any platform. With thousands of servers in 97 countries, NordVPN is one of the fastest VPNs out there. One NordVPN account can be used on multiple devices, and it supports every major platform like Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, Linux, and even Android TV. Sounds good, right? And we have a deal for you. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/ATRM. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's a no-brainer really. The link is in the podcast episode description box, but here it is again, nordvpn.com/ATRM. What are you waiting for? This episode of All the Right Movies is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is, therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help, or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now, you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And, special offer to All the Right Movies listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ATRM. That's betterhelp.com/ATRM. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode.
The middle.
Into the middle of Master and Commander, and the death of Wally has dampened spirits aboard the Surprise.
Yeah.
The tragic scenes revolving around Hollum, the Jonah, are coming, but first, it's more Lucky Jack and Dr. Steve.
It is.
It is.
Loggerheads.
So, after the action-packed Act 1, Weir brings us back to Earth with some character drama and friction between the captain and the surgeon. Jack and Stephen disagree, firstly over Jack's stubborn pursuit of the Acheron, and then Stephen's obsession with the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Matt, what are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the argument to have after Worsley's gone overboard, because I think this is a really important character moment for these two here and for the film in general. It's the first time we really see a flaw in Jack. He was warned about the ability of the mast to stand up in that storm, but he's so single-minded, on he went and pursued the course anyway, which is his duty, as he points out, but it's come at the cost of a man's life. And obviously none of the men can say anything to him about it, but Stephen can. And I think Bettany plays this scene so well. You can see he's treading so carefully. You know, am I talking to you as a friend or as the captain? You know, he wants to establish what ground they're on. And it's not that Jack doesn't care. You can see how guilty he feels. And Stephen isn't trying to guilt trip him, but Stephen is the only one who can ask these questions. You know, shouldn't we have turned back weeks ago? Isn't this just about your pride now? And I think if there is a theme in the film, it's about what is the cost of duty when you place it above everything else. And I think this is probably the best scene in exploring that.
Yeah, I agree. I said earlier that I think Crowe's best moments, acting-wise anyway, come in the debates between Jack and Stephen.
Yeah.
I think Crowe and Bettany bounce off each other really well, and this is the first time that happens. From what I understand, the friendship of Jack and Stephen is the kind of bedrock of Patrick O'Brien's books, and Weir clearly understands that by making that relationship a key part of the film as well. Jack's a man of pride and duty, Stephen a man of science, and where they kind of meet is in art. They bond over music, which is kind of a middle ground.
Yeah.
That's a nice bit of writing, and those music scenes are especially important for Jack, I think. It's like he expresses with a violin bow the things his position as captain stop him doing with words sometimes.
Yeah, good point.
And this particular argument is really good, where Stephen says they should have turned back weeks ago. It's well written and well acted, and it's the first time we see anybody question Lucky J's opinion. So it was much needed from that point of view, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Very much. Lucky J, like.
Wouldn't call him that to his face.
Yeah, too right. I'm going to go for another disagreement between the two, because these are, like you said, John, it's some of the best character moments and some of the best acted moments in the film, and it really does carry it along. And the argument about visiting the Galapagos Islands is just so on the nose almost. It's kind of just ridiculous when he's just like, we haven't got time for your damned hobbies, sir. And he's just, bang, put that, I'm going to put you in your place with that. Yeah. It really, and that's the most brutal he can be to him, though, isn't it? It's like, and it belittles him and makes him believe that what he believes in isn't important, and what is important is the colours, and everything else is just, if we have time to do it, then that's fine. But what I've found out through multiple watches of this is that these islands save them both eventually. That's the whole point. It's the safe haven. It's the place that they need to get to. It is the place where he steps off the ship and thinks about himself. And you know, you go on holidays with somebody and they just want to go off and get pissed, but you want to go to the beach and just have a nice time. Do you know what I mean? I just want to go to the restaurant and just have something nice to eat and just have a bit of a chilled out. And it's like, no, we're going out and we're getting absolutely smashed, man. It's like, well, you're going to regret that in the morning if we just went somewhere nice. And it's just, it has that kind of, there's almost a relationship here.
Yeah.
But this really highlights the characters and again shows how determined Jack is. But again, is that to everyone's expense? Yeah. Just so he can be Nelson almost. Do you know what I mean? Stephen's trying to say, you are this person. You're not who you think you are. Let's take everyone's opinion on board. And it really works.
It does. I mean, I think the reason the Galapagos Islands are used as a setting of these, like, scientific discoveries is probably because of Charles Darwin. Lots of his understanding of evolution came from the Galapagos Islands. That gives the setting a lot of period-relevant weight, so it works really well. And these scenes aren't just well acted. I think they're really well written, too. The way the conversations develop naturally from innocent into like yelling at each other is really good. Yeah. And after the opening where the film's told us, yep, we know how to film action sequences, it's now telling us we know how to write as well, which is impressive.
And film dialogue sequences. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But Stephen's argument here definitely needs some work. They're aboard an HMS ship, and he's suggesting to Captain England that they abandon their orders so he can go off and study some swimming iguanas. He's got no chance.
I just feel sorry for Stephen. Like, he's seen iguanas that can swim. No one's ever seen that before. And he's all dressed up for it. He's got a sun hat on and everything.
Just needs a deck chair.
Looks like he's wearing like a dressing gown as well. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is weird. He just needs, like, that sunblock where they cover the whole nose. It's
Yes.
all white.
But there is a Charles Darwin reference in the film here. When they're watching the iguanas, one of the crew says, disgusting, warts all over it.
Right.
And that is apparently what Darwin said when he first saw them.
Yeah, that turned me stomach, that bit. I was, oh.
Yeah, a man of science there.
Yeah.
So the pursuit continues, and the film takes a turn into some good dramatic writing.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely, yeah. Some of the best.
From there, even more intense character drama. Things have been brewing between the non-commissioned crew and midshipman Holland for the whole film, and it comes to a head now.
Yeah.
Branded a Jonah and curse on the ship, Holland goes above deck in the middle of the night and hurls himself into the murky ocean depths, killing himself.
Yeah.
He does.
The night's darkest just before the dawn, Westy.
Apparently so.
Your favourite scene?
Yep. A little bit of misery. But my is Nagel disrespects Holland on the deck. But, I mean, has he got good reason to? Does the film actually support what he's saying is true? Is he a bad influence? The morning of the battle, he didn't have the guts to beat the quarters. Fair enough. His entire gun crew was killed except for him. Ah, okay. As soon as he went up the Luzon Will Falls, he was responsible for that. And it was his watch when they lost the wind. I mean, that's enough. That's enough for me in this century to be like, he's bad news bears, isn't he? He's just not good to be there. And I think it's one of the best moments from Crowe as well when he's trying to just gear him up and say, look, man, this is what you need to do. You need to be an arsehole, basically. And I've been a manager in a couple of jobs that I've done, and you do not expect to have any friends.
No.
And that's, I think Holland's too soft for this. He's too soft for the world. He's like Paul Kossoff in Free. Like, he's too soft.
There's a reference for you.
Wow.
Yeah, look it up. That's the whole point. He's just too nice of a guy to be in a rock band, you know what I mean? It's just too much emotion. He thinks too much. And the great thing about the film, and the great thing that Peter Weir does, is that we as an audience feel really sorry for him. And then it's rectified itself, and the wind comes back, and you go, right. And you believe in superstition. You start to go, well, what is actually real in the world? And this is a Westy theory, but I think the whole surprise is just an allegory about the moon landing. No, I'm kidding. It's a great moment, and I think it's great from Crowe when he's just straight in there, and he's like, you, clamping irons, and flogs him. And this really highlights that.
Yeah, the crew blame Holland for Wally's death, but the first time we see tension between them is when the crew are singing Spanish Ladies earlier on, and Holland joins in.
Oh, God, it's so painful.
Oh, God.
Stephen's like, what a wonderfully true voice Mr. Holland possesses. But the crew are furious about it.
Yeah, change the song, don't they?
Imagine it being Quint, he'd interrupted.
Oh, imagine. Just eating an apple with a massive knife.
But I don't like Nagel, the guy who disrespects Holland and gets flogged for his troubles.
I don't like him either. I don't think it's a particularly great performance, to be honest. I think it's one of them ones you go, he's trying too hard.
Yeah, Brian Dick, the actor's called. He also played Ernie Wise in a BBC drama about Morecambe and Wise.
Okay.
Where he's obviously more likeable than he is here.
Well, yeah, much more.
And Holland is played by Lee Ingleby from the North East set TV show Inspector George Gently. So nice to see him in there.
Oh, well, there you are. No wonder he killed himself. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, when Holland does kill himself, I mean, he's been so out of place from the beginning, like at the start, and on about what to do when he first sees the Akron, to the point where, you know, people below him have to urge him to do something, make a decision.
Yeah.
And as you say, when they're having that sing-song and dance on deck, and he starts along, just like tapping along to the beat so awkwardly.
Oh, God, it's so painful.
It's like, you ever been at like a wedding reception and someone's like stone cold sober because they're the designated driver, and they're trying to get in, it's just like, don't even attempt it.
I know what you're saying.
It's awful. He's just like a lost kid in a man's world. Like Blakeney has more leadership qualities than he does. And Blakeney's 13. He's half his age.
Yeah.
And that friendship that they do have, Holland and Blakeney, I do think that's been really nicely developed. So you feel Blakeney's grief when Holland does jump overboard. No. And unfortunately for him, it just gets that really haunting moment where he just descends into the depths.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite jarring for me to watch it because it just pulls on the heartstrings a little bit. It's just, he's not right.
No.
But I would imagine there's so many people in that period where they weren't prepared for what it was like.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Again, that's the authenticity of it. It's just, it's superbly done. He's a man with a fork in a world of soup.
But yeah, I think it is really sad, all that stuff with Holland. It comes at the right time, and the film needs it though, because with Jack's posturing and Stephen banging on about blizzards and bugs.
Tiny beetle as well.
Tiny.
Yeah, that'll do. All right, great.
But Stephen and Jack argue again about whether Nagel should be flogged, which is one disagreement too many for me, to be honest. At this point, all Jack and Stephen seem to do is argue, just get the cello out. That'll sort it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And Holm killing himself, what a way to go that is. Cannonball in your pocket straight down to the hot place.
Yeah.
I mean, you mean business when you do that. Really needed sequence, I think, from the film's point of view.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know, Jonah comes from the Bible, because there's the book of Jonah, and in that Jonah disobeys a command from God, who sends a storm to attack the ship that Jonah's on, and the crew throw Jonah overboard so the storm will stop, and since then, that's where the sailor's superstition has come from. Jonah is a person who brings bad luck to a ship.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. He was also a character in the Beano, Jonah. A sailor where he was like this gormless, chinless klutz who would accidentally sink every ship he was on.
Like Uncle Albert.
Everyone listening to this going, please squeeze a Beano reference in there.
Done?
Yeah. Oh, this is great. This is a great fact. In the novels, Holland doesn't commit suicide. He's murdered by a character called Horner. He's not in the film, but Holland gets Horner's wife pregnant, so Horner kills them both and then hangs himself.
Right. Great fact.
Isn't it? I'm not going to read these books. These sound great.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see why they changed it. It's nice and simple in the film, I think.
Yeah.
Although it might have been nice to have, like, a woman in there at some point.
Yeah.
Also, when Holm jumps overboard, the witness is William Bettany, we mentioned, the 13-year-old officer, played by Max Purkis. He has quite a bit to do in the film, I think.
Yeah,
he does, yeah.
What do we think of him in there?
I think it could have gone really badly wrong, this role. Like a posh 13-year-old running about the deck.
Sounds awful.
Does sound awful. Could have been really irritating. I mean, I have seen better child performances, but I think considering how many of his scenes are with Crowe and with Bettany, I think he holds his own. I think he does a good job. Yeah,
apparently like 13-year-old midshipmen did exist at the time and were treated no differently on the ships, so we wanted to show that in the film. And I like how Bettany's kind of a protege of both Jack and Stephen. He's an officer like Jack with an interest in natural history like Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Should have got him in the band, the missing piece.
He's got one arm.
Def Leppard.
Beat the quarters, just a quarter beat. Just on the 2 and the 4, if you don't mind.
And we've mentioned a few members of the crew now, so it seems like a good time to ask our second ATRM Patreon question, seeing as it is about the crew.
Okay, let's do it.
So, Eamon Keating.
Hello, Eamon.
He's asking, who would be your ultimate movie crew? Captain, first mate, doctor/science guy, shipwrecked lady, young plucky kid who dies, and evil guy who tries to do mutiny, and initially it works until it all goes tits up. Now you're talking like an Irishman, Eamon.
Nice.
I assume he's Irish. Might not be.
Well, yeah.
So, Westy?
Yeah.
Your ultimate movie crew?
Right. Well, I've gone for people that would be available now.
Lovely.
Without any more bullshit. Okay. Captain Anthony Hopkins.
Lovely.
Right.
Very nice, right? He'd be massive, wouldn't he? He would love that.
Massive.
First mate, Cillian Murphy.
Lovely.
Underneath, that'd be nice. Doctor Science guy, Mark Ruffalo.
Bow tie.
Shipwrecked lady, Emily Blunt, obviously.
Oh, very
She would
nice.
be wonderful. Young kid who dies, Barry Keoghan.
Isn't he 30?
We can play any age. You know, stick a wig on him. Stick some Milky Bar on his head. An evil guy who does the mutiny. I was thinking, well, who could be who's really popular now, who's really good, but he's like, play against type. And I would have Bradley Cooper in there.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, that could work, yeah.
Yeah, that's my crew for me at the minute if I was to make it. But I haven't got the energy, so someone else is going to have to make it. I'm not Peter Weir.
I'd watch out, Westy, for sure.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Well, I read Eamon's question slightly differently. I thought he was meaning like established captains, etc., from previous films.
You can take it that way if you like, yeah.
Wow. That's going to take you about a couple of weeks to
Well,
sort that out.
it took a while. I mean, captain, obviously, Kirk. No other choice but get Kirk in there.
Oh, John's
Easily.
loving that.
The shot, lovely.
Yeah. First mate, I've gone back to Zulu and Nigel Green, who plays Colour Sergeant Bourne.
Very nice.
He's just awesome in that. He's the guy you want in every battle, backing you up. He's amazing.
Absolutely. You're alive.
Cut along now, lads. That's what you want from him. Dr. Science Guy, Gandalf, obviously. Shipwrecked Lady, I've gone for Ripley from the beginning of Aliens. I think she fits the bill.
Okay.
Lovely.
Young plucky kid who dies, Newt in Alien 3, unfortunately, which we'd all like to forget, but it does happen.
Yeah.
I'm really confused by this.
Well, just wait till you hear me last one. Mute in the Sky. Billy Zane in Titanic.
Okay, right, okay, got you.
I have a child.
I have a child.
I'm all she has in the world. It's, like, so you're taking the character that they played in that film and then you're putting it into the new film?
Yes.
Right, okay, I get you. I'll listen back to that when it comes out.
Hopefully it'll make more sense then.
Wouldn't count on it.
John, oh, you're not doing one. Just be the fucking cast of the Enterprise, wouldn't it?
Okay, yeah, I can go for that. I never get another chance to do this again. My all-time Star Trek crew.
Oh, amazing.
I love how you know this just off the top of your head.
No, save it for Patreon because people are paying money for this.
So, Captain,
Yep.
I've gone for... Matt's already took Kirk, so I've got to go for Captain Picard.
Okay.
Moral
one,
man,
yeah.
loads of speeches.
Yeah.
First mate, his number one, Will Riker, will have sex with any alien,
Okay.
which is always a good thing.
Take your word for it.
Doctor, I've gone for Dr. Bashir of Deep Space Nine. No, actually,
Okay.
scratch that. I'm going for the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager, who was a hologram. So that's pretty cool.
Brilliant.
Shipwrecked Lady, Jadzia Dax.
Obviously.
Have a look at her, and you'll see why.
Beautiful.
Okay, right.
Plucky kid who dies has got to be Wesley Crusher.
Gotta be.
Not so much for his pluck, but if he dies, that annoying little shit is definitely going in there for that.
Okay.
And the guy who tries to mutiny is Data, also Star Trek Next Generation.
What a twist.
Wow.
Because there is an episode where he does mutiny, and it's a bloody good one.
Okay,
Wow.
right.
Honest to God, I did not expect that at all, and that was a fucking joy to listen to.
That was wonderful.
I've never seen your face light up so much. You're like Oppenheimer of Star Trek. It's outrageous.
Destroyer of Worlds.
Yeah.
And that is the end of the middle. We get to the heart of the film with some tough character drama. Holland's gone, and Jack and Stephen decide to stop bickering. There's a ship to catch, after all.
There is.
The Enterprise surprise.
The crew.
Films with huge budgets usually have huge crews. That's the case on Master and Commander, and it's the teams behind the scenes we're talking about now. That is the composers on the film, as well as the visual teams in terms of both cinematography and visual effects. But first, as we usually do, we're kicking things off with the screenwriters.
Okay.
So the credited screenwriters on Master and Commander are Peter Weir and John Colley, with some uncredited work by Akiva Goldsman.
All right.
Weir we know about, a director who often wrote as well. This was his 8th writing credit. John Colley, though, this was only his 2nd screenwriting credit after Paper Mask in 1990, an adaptation of his own novel.
Right.
Right.
He also wrote 4 episodes of Bergerac, John Colley.
Oh, there you are.
So,
Right.
great work there, obviously.
Obviously.
How about Master and Commander, Westy?
Oh, I mean, it's the writing is just the backbone of the film, isn't it? There's no ad lib in this at all.
No.
Can you just ad lib anything? No, you can't. It needs to be on the page because we've talked about the accuracy, we've talked about the authenticity, and it is really authentic. The dialogue really works. It's that good. You want it to be now because it's so colourful and it's so entertaining. And for them to find all of this information from the source material and make it make sense and have fans of the book applaud this.
Yeah.
I think it's just a real credit to Peter Weir and a real credit to John Colley as well, just to come together and say, we are sticking to this source material. We are not going to add anything into it to make it popular. We're going to be very true to the source material. And it's one of the very rare films where you go, they've stayed true to the source material and it's absolutely worked. There's a real confidence in the writing, and they know what they're going to do, and they know what they're going to say, and they know what they need to address, and it's all on the page for me. I think it's fantastic writing.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said earlier, I think the scenes between Jack and Stephen are where I start to really notice the writing, and that carries on from there for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
I think the narrative, chasing the superior enemy vessel, is very good. You'd probably expect a good plot from a book adaptation. The 2 lead characters are very good and well acted, like we talked about.
Yeah.
I would say the secondary characters aren't massively memorable for me, which I imagine is not the case in the books, judging by how popular they are. So I think they might suffer a bit.
Fair enough.
Where the film does excel in the writing for me is in the research. We talked about how Weir wanted authenticity from his design teams, and that's definitely there in the writing as well. Weir and Colley and Patrick O'Brien clearly know the subject matter very well. I like all the old Sea Dog style dialogue that we hear all the way through the film, and I really like how they really explain what it means. Like, beat to quarters, they never explain it. They treat the audience as intelligent enough to figure out that it kind of means battle stations, basically. I think this is a great example of historical fiction. It's respectful to the reality and feels like a look into the past without sacrificing the narrative or entertainment. Really good screenwriting for me.
There's a real respect there, isn't there? And they're not changing it for anybody, and that really works.
Yeah, for the books and for the time as well, I think.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, you can absolutely tell that this is an adapted screenplay, and the source material has been written by someone who lives and breathes this subject in this era. Like,
definitely.
I don't care how much research you do by yourself. Unless this is something you're passionate about, it's never going to come across as well as it does here. Like you guys, I love the dialogue because, as you say, it doesn't over-explain it. When Jack realises they're being chased by the Acheron and he says, "Run like smoke and oakum." I don't know what oakum is. I don't understand that phrase as a series of words. But in this world and in the context, I know it's serious and that's all you need to know. It means, let's go fast. You don't need it explaining. And it's the same with how well the hierarchy on the ship is portrayed. You can see the various levels of men. Some of them can have a joke with Jack or show a bit of cheek, like Alan or Killick, but some absolutely can't. And you can see the mini hierarchies on there, like who's the bosun's mate, who's the carpenter's mate, who answers to who. And what's good for me is that Stephen questions these hierarchies. You know, when Jack says the men must be governed, Stephen comes back to him, well, that's the excuse of every tyrant in history. So there's depth in there as well. I think it's very detailed and very convincing writing.
Very nice.
The first book in the Aubrey Maturin series was published in 1969. The film is mainly adapted from the 10th book, Far Side of the World, but also takes elements from Master and Commander, the first book, and one called HMS Surprise.
Yeah, it's like a compilation of highlights, I think, from the series.
Yeah, I think that's where the title comes from as well, isn't it? Because they're honouring both books.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Under title of, like, The Far Side of the World is smaller font. It's, like, the same.
Exactly, yeah. I think Master and Commander works great as a film title as well as a book title.
Definitely.
Yeah. I do think the title lets it down, though. Just call it Master and Commander.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree, yeah.
You don't need to go to the far side of a fart. Like, it's fine.
Yes, as you might expect, there's quite a few references to lots of the other books, for the fans, so they get them. So one is, the book is set in 1812, but the film takes place in 1805, and that's because in the book, the ship the Surprise is hunting isn't a French ship called the Acheron, it's a US ship called the USS Norfolk, and they said it earlier to make the bad guys French instead.
Right.
Yeah, we have said they changed it, probably, obviously, because American studios would never fund a film where they were the enemy.
No, definitely not.
And changing it to the French, the Battle of Trafalgar was 1805. After that, the French were in such a naval force, so to be realistic and authentic, they had to move it before that so they could make the French the bad guys.
Right. Okay. That
And
research
then,
is paying off there, John. Imagine that in your first date.
I've tried it. It doesn't go down well.
Yeah. Do you know what I know about? And then at one point, Stephen says to Jack, the French have their spies in England and elsewhere, as do we. And in the book, Stephen is an intelligent agent who infiltrates the French.
Oh, wow, really? That'd be cool.
Yeah. I wonder if that meant something, because it's something he doesn't need to say, and it goes nowhere in the film, so it sounds very much like kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink, book readers.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And then talking of Stephen, before he plays the cello, he flexes his fingers, and that's a reference to the books where Stephen is captured by the French, and they torture him, and they break all his fingers.
Right.
Oof. At least they didn't take his dry wit. That would have been a big miss.
How do you take that? You can't take me fingers.
But you'll never take me wit.
Exactly.
And then if you look closely, Jack has a scarred ear. It's never mentioned, but in the books, Jack was shot in the ear by a musket ball, which is where the scar comes from.
Nice.
Right. Shame they didn't shave that hair off.
I know. Just the ponytail got hit with the musket ball. That would have been fine for me.
I think those things are nice touches for fans of the novel, though. They'll see that and know what it means.
Yeah, I'd love that. I would have loved that. You know, being an avid reader of 10 novels and you go, wow, they're not even explaining that. I know that.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
Yeah, brilliant.
And like Matt just said, the name of the enemy ship in the book was the Norfolk. The name of the Acheron comes from Greek mythology. It's the name of a river in Hades, the underworld where you go after you die.
Yeah, Hades is the Greek god who has the dog with 3 heads.
All right, nice.
Yeah, that river can only be crossed by boat, and if someone touched it, they lose their memory. I think also it just sounds really cool as the name of the bad ship.
Is that where you have to pay the ferryman as well? You have to give him a
I think that's the one. I think that's right. Yeah.
Right.
And also at one point, Weir and Colley toyed with the idea of adding a love interest for Jack. They decided not to go with it in the end, but apparently Weir was considering Keira Knightley for that part if they went with it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Lucky Jack, all right. She would have been a bit young, though, wouldn't she? She was only about 18.
I would have thought so, yeah.
There is actually one woman in the film, if you've noticed.
Yes. When they come to port, isn't it? Ish?
Yeah, they're getting supplies. She's one of the natives.
That's right, yeah. It's when the Surprise comes in to refit at the South Sea Island. We see a few locals. One's a beautiful young woman, obviously. Yeah. And Jack gives her a lingering gaze, obviously.
Yes. Of course he does. That's all he needs.
Beat the quarters, lad. And there was a real-life inspiration for Jack as well. Patrick O'Brien apparently based him on a real-life Navy captain called Lord Thomas Cochrane, and he captured over 50 enemy vessels, and in battle he disguised his ship, which was the HMS Speedy, as American to confuse a Spanish ship that was twice as big as his was.
Right, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Another terrible name for a boat, Speedy. HMS Speedy.
I know, Speedy Gonzales.
I know.
And the line that Pulling says about the advice he got from Lord Nelson, never mind manoeuvres, always go straight at him.
Yeah.
That line was taken from Thomas Cochrane's diary. It was something that Nelson apparently said to him when they met, which is pretty cool.
Right.
It is pretty cool, but it's terrible advice.
Yeah.
Plough straight in. Don't think about it. On the open sea. Like, it's the last thing I would do.
Are you explaining how to do naval warfare to Lord Nelson, Wes?
Yes, I am. Westy's column. They're going to pull it down.
Time for paper on question number 3 now, and it comes on the historical fiction aspect of the film, as we were just talking about.
Okay.
So, Burke Swenson, now then Burke.
Hello, Burke.
Hi, mate.
Burke says, Master and Commander is one of my favourite films at depicting a historically accurate setting, aside from changing the dates to make France the enemy instead of the US.
Yeah.
What are a few of you gents' favourite historical films?
Okay. Historical or historically accurate? I've gone for historically accurate, I think, is probably
Lovely.
because this film is so authentic and it has that accuracy that I've just have to go for Braveheart. On every no. There's a few. I mean, I was a real sucker for them, like, Spartacus, Lawrence of Arabia, Zulu. Loved all them kind of big historical epics. But recently I've kind of had to think about it and go, well, what's historically makes sense? And that was how it was. And it was like Apollo 13. I think it's one of them films where you go, yeah, that's exactly what it was like. Or Black Hawk Down, Ridley Scott's film. But the one that stands out for me, and it is still in my top 3 films of all time, and a very historically accurate film, and a beautiful film, and one of the best films ever made, is The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Lovely.
That's a beautiful film, and that is historically absolutely spot on. I've never seen a gunfight in a bedroom that's been more accurate than that in my fucking life. You think any cowboy can just shoot somebody on the horizon? They can't. Them guns were shit.
Yeah, I think he misses him from about 3 yards, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And then they hits him in the arm, and it's oh fucking hell. That's what a bullet was like. Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, historical covers quite a lot of films.
Yeah.
But if we're talking as in hundreds of years or more, I'm a big fan of Gladiator, which we've already mentioned.
Yeah, big film.
Oh, yeah.
Again, not for its historical accuracy, necessarily, because it just makes stuff up. But as historical blockbuster epics go, that's right up there for me.
As being in the Colosseum, that's pretty close.
Fantastic,
I would imagine, yeah.
My favourite, though, and finally I get a chance to mention it, because it's lost in about 400 of the polls we do when choosing episodes.
Oh, here we go. We know what it's going to be. We'll go for it. John, we'll get it in eventually, I promise you.
Favourite Star Trek crew and Amadeus in one episode.
Yes,
Blindly.
we've done it. We've done it. Fuck the haters.
Yeah. So Amadeus, the Mozart biopic. I'm going to save waxing too lyrical for the podcast that will never happen.
It will happen. We'll get it sorted.
But it is a magnificent piece of work in basically every aspect of filmmaking, and for my money, better even than One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Wow.
It's by the same director, Milos Forman. I'm not just randomly comparing it to a totally different film.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, Amadeus, historically superb. Production design and costume design in Amadeus is unbelievable.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, again, I tried to go down the accuracy route. I think Zulu is worth mentioning because that is fairly accurate to how that battle played out. They did do a lot of research.
They did.
Obviously, some details do change. I mentioned Nigel Green's character. In real life, he was a lot younger. But by and large, in terms of how that battle went, it's largely accurate.
Yeah, I mean, there's the French commissary. He had a lot more to do with it, and he wasn't a coward. But, you know, he'll have a vote for it, and we'll talk about it.
But I think in terms of the strategy of the Zulus as they attacked and the strategy of the men on Walk's Drift, that's all based on how it went, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The horns of the buffalo and everything, yeah.
Yeah. I also think Lincoln is worth mentioning here. You know, that the
nice,
film about the freeing of the slaves, where very little warfare in it. And it's all about, like, the backroom deals and the horse trading and the favours that had to be given out to various senators to pass that legislation to free the slaves. So that, I think, is very, very historically accurate.
I think that was quite shit on because it was Spielberg.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that's Spielberg. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's fantastical as a director, but he did Schindler's List, and everyone took notice of that.
Yeah.
And then when he tries to do something else historical, they're like, nah, it's Spielberg.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right.
It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. And the last one I did want to mention is the Titanic sinking in general, because obviously James Cameron's Titanic, the main correction he made was showing the fact that it split in two before it sank.
Yeah.
Because previous versions of the film, they didn't realise that had happened. But I would say if you want the really accurate version, it's the version from the 60s, A Night to Remember, which I think is just a much more accurate portrayal of life on the Titanic before it sank.
Mm-hmm. Have a child?
Yeah, it doesn't have Billy Zane, unfortunately, doing that.
For their work as writers and master and commander, Peter Weir and John Colley received no major award recognition. They just lost Lord of the Rings anyway. But for us,
undoubtedly.
Some excellent and authentic writing.
It's wonderful writing, yeah.
It's authentic.
Yeah.
It's that word again.
From the writing, we're sailing onto the music, and the composers and master and commander were Ivor Davies, Christopher Gordon and Richard Tognetti. Ivor Davies was known as founding member of Australian rock outfit Icehouse. Fan of those guys, Matt?
Oh, love them. Yeah. On all the albums.
On vinyl.
Yeah.
Christopher Gordon was known for his music on Australian TV, and Richard Tognetti, we mentioned earlier, was an international violin soloist.
All right.
So Davies, Gordon and Tognetti together at last.
Yes.
How do we like the music of Master and Commander, Matt?
It feels very, very subtle to me at first listen, because it's not hugely OTT, it's not hugely bombastic. The only time it feels huge is when you listen to it on its own, which I've done a couple of times now in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
It has that huge boom and percussion sound to it. It's got the drums, it's got the whistles. But when you watch the film, I think the music is just interlaced with the visuals so well. It underpins the action, it doesn't overwhelm it.
Yeah.
It's not maybe something you'd be humming afterwards unless you've listened to it a lot, but it's definitely one of the elements of the film where the more you watch it, the more you realise just how good this music is.
I agree. I think it's not until you come to talk about the music in the film that you realise just how big a part it all has to play. Not just the score, but as part of the narrative. We talked about Jack and Stephen's like dueling banjos and the crew bursting into song every 5 minutes. It's like South Pacific. I like those moments though, especially the scene in the wardroom where the officer's saying, "Don't forget your old shipmates." That is brilliant. Great track. And the score is excellent. The most obvious thing would have been for them to write loads of swashbuckling cues and stuff. But no, it's Mozart and Bach at one end, and then at the other, they've clearly taken inspiration from like old sea shanties of the time, and it all fuses together really well. I love that as a way to take us into that world, using the music of the time. I think it's a big part of the world building, and the way music's used all the way through, different kinds of music as well. I think it's genuinely really impressive.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was like, I saw this in the structure and I was like, there's a score to this. Is there? Like, this music, is there? Like, and I had to watch it again. It's like the third or fourth time I watched it, like you guys have said, and it really is interlaced with it. And I don't think that it was made to reflect that time. It is that time. Yeah, just everything that we as looked at on this film, honest to God, it gives me a migraine of like the level of detail. He's just went, oh, we're going to do this sea shanty from here, and we're going to have Mozart, and it's just going to blend. And he doesn't use it as an emotional cue. He doesn't go, look, this is a sad moment. There's the strings, there's the big soundtrack. It's not Hans Zimmer coming in going, hey, there you go. He doesn't need that.
No.
It really is a hand in hand with the visuals, and it intertwines. Even if you played this to me now, I couldn't go, oh, that's from Master and Commander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say this sounds like it should be from Master and Commander.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about, and I think that, considering how big this film looks, it could have a sweeping, big score, epic, massive.
That's what you would normally get, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Exactly, but it's not there. It's beautiful throughout all of it.
Well, something we don't always go into massive detail on, which I think maybe we should here, is sound design.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The sound designer of Master and Commander was Richard King. He won an Oscar for the film.
It's outrageous.
It's like everything else. It's subtle and it's grounded, but then it explodes when it needs to be. So just the bits that you don't notice until you really pay attention, like the constant creaking in the background and the constant lapping of the waves in the quiet moments. But then when the action comes on, it's just chaos and it's boom, 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 and it just throws you into the world again. And, you know, we've mentioned him, Richard Kind. He was the sound designer. Yeah. And he worked closely with the film's lead historical consultant, a guy called Gordon Lako. And they found 19th century cannon collectors who owned a 24-pounder and a 12-pounder cannon. I mean, 1 cannon is outrageous enough. Imagine owning 2. So they went to their studio and recorded the sound of the cannons firing and also the screech of the cannonball as it flew overhead, and that's what they use in the film.
It's outrageous. There's so many times I've said, turn the sound off and watch this film and you know what's going on.
Yeah.
This film, turn the visuals off and just listen to it and you'll know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
That's how good the sound design is in this. It's absolutely outrageous.
It is exceptional. I mean, a 19th century cannon collector. I found my new hobby.
It's an expensive hobby, that mate.
Yeah. And to get the sound of the cannonballs actually hitting the ships, they went to an artillery range with those cannons, set up wooden targets and blasted them with the cannons. Best job ever, that.
I love that. I love that.
Shouting, "Let fly" at the time. Brilliant.
And to create the sound of the wind during the storm sequence we're talking about, King created a wooden frame rigged with 1,000 feet of line. He put it on the back of a pickup truck and drove at 70 miles an hour. He mixed the sound of that with a barbecue grill. Like, what? What? I've driven 70 miles an hour and never thought I need to stick a barbecue grill on this and it'll sound like a storm. Like, it's never happened.
I bet Russell Crowe was loving the barbecue as well.
Oh, I'm sure he was. It's the only reason the barbecue grill was in there.
But I mean, the sound design stands out, doesn't it, all the way through? Definitely adds to the film.
It's so good.
So some great sounds on Master and Commander, a great use of music, diegetic and non-diegetic, and Richard King, sound designer, deserving of that Oscar.
Definitely.
Yeah, the sound design is the score of this film.
Yeah.
That's how Master and Commander sounds. How about how it looks? Well, we're about to find out as we talk the visuals on the film by covering off the cinematography and visual effects work. The director of photography was Russell Boyd, working with Peter Weir for the 5th time, and the effects studios were ILM, Asylum and Weta Workshop. Yeah. Cinematography for you, is it, Westy?
Oh, every time. Normally, I watch a film and go, oh, right, okay, well, what lens was that and how was that? This is one of the first films that I've seen recently where I just didn't really care. I don't think anyone shot anything like this. A ship at sea. And there's a real visual representation of science versus nature, of man-made structures versus the ocean, everything against you. Like, I mean, the silhouettes of people just climbing down the sails of stuff. Incredible. And but it doesn't feel pretentious at any point. It doesn't feel like it's put in there to go, oh, this is visually beautiful. I mean, Russell Boyd's done like Crocodile Dundee 1 and 2, but I mean he did Gallipoli as well, and I think he's got a real close relationship with Weir and knows exactly what Weir wants. Never once did I go, oh, that's a 35. Never once did I go, oh, they're punching on an 85 on a close-up here. It feels like we're just in the camera and it's just the same lens all the way through, and that's the best thing that you can do, I think, as a cinematographer, is take people out of the mechanics of it, especially me. If I'm looking for the mechanics in it and I cannot find them, it didn't pull us out of the story, it pulled us into the story. And Russell Boyd being like so overlooked as a cinematographer, I think. He is the Stephen for me in this crew. No ego whatsoever. He's not putting shots in there that don't need to be in there. There's not these big, massive sunsets. You know, like you mentioned, Matt, when Jack's on the mast and the camera comes round, it's a helicopter shot, and that's incredibly hard to do and incredibly fucking expensive in 2003. But it really, really works for the story. Like, he's not doing it just to go, oh, doesn't that look great? To do any justice to Russell Boyd's work in this film is that every shot that you watch feels as good as it looks. That's a cohesive piece of work, and that's real cinema.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Russell Boyd where he started off by saying, Master and Commander, gee, that was a hard film to make.
Yeah, I'm not fucking surprised. And I wouldn't have said gee either. I would be like, fuck me.
And it's one of those films where the cinematography looks really hard to do, at least as well as this anyway, because it's stunning.
You don't notice it though either, unless you really look and go, yeah, actually, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we see a wide shot or establishing shot of the ship, and there's quite a lot, it's just like, wow. Not just because of how well framed and how well shot it is, but because it's like, well, that's how it would have looked 200 years ago, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The helicopter shots of the ship are just jaw-dropping. Shots where we see the ships in silhouette are equally brilliant. And that scene where Calamity goes out on the raft at night to create a decoy for the Acheron to chase.
Yeah.
The lighting of that scene is outrageously good. It feels like you're there.
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's just like one lamp, and then you still see it in the distance, and he creates depth in the frame.
Yeah.
You know how the music moves like the ocean moves. So is the camera. There's Dutch angles.
Yeah.
Without it saying, oh, there's a
Yeah.
problem here. That's incredibly difficult to do without someone going, oh, the camera's moved. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And that decoy trick is something that Thomas Cochrane did again in real life, the madman.
Oh, right, really?
I think this feels like it's shot by a team who know exactly what they're doing, but also have the creative talent to be innovative, which gives it this great blend of being classically shot and also looking modern. I mean, the cinematography just feels timeless. Maybe the most impressive part of the film for me.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
In 90% of the film is set at sea, but only 10 days of the shoot was spent aboard the HMS Rose replica out at sea. They spent 100 days shooting at Baja Studios in Mexico, because there they had a 20 million gallon water tank.
Wow.
Yeah, no. And they created a replica of the replica mounted on a gimbal and shot most of the film there.
That is an enormous tank. It's also where James Cameron shot lots of Titanic.
I imagine, yeah.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Seems to be the go-to place for big productions now. Pirates of the Caribbean's filmed there as well. So Baja Studios must be doing all right.
Yeah, there must be, but then it's a testament to Boyd that all them films were shot there, and this one is the most believable.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Weir and Boyd had developed a technique from other films where they would shoot scenes with multiple cameras, which saved time on shooting, obviously. And he spent time researching other films that had been shot at sea so he could learn from the problems that other filmmakers come across.
Jaws, one of those, surely.
Yeah, most yeah. The shark works in this film.
Well, I want to talk about the visual effects because when I put my first notes together for these episodes, the first thing I genuinely wrote down was invisible, because that's exactly what they are. It's invisible effects, seamless. Like all logic tells you, there's obviously going to be visual effects in here, but they're blended in so well. There's not one moment where something is so clearly CGI or on a green screen that it takes you out of the film. Whether it's the storm, the boats, the fog, the gun smoke, everything just blends together to be completely convincing.
It does. I mean, I just said the cinematography might be the best part of the film, but the effects aren't far behind.
No.
Brilliant. Like I said, there were 3 effects studios, so there were 2 full-scale ships, like you mentioned, Matt, a replica of the HMS Rose and a replica of the HMS Rose. There was then a scale model created of the Surprise. That was done by Weta Workshop, who we hired because they'd just done miniature work on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing to have in your modelling portfolio, is it?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Middle-earth. And then Asylum created CGI animatics of the ships, and once those were approved, they were sent to ILM, who would then digitally composite the CGI ships into the real footage. In any shot where we see both ships at the same time, they always made sure at least one of them was real, either one of the replicas or the scale model, to give it that real-world weight that models can bring. I mean, it's all just exceptional. It looks fantastic today to me. Whether it's a replica, a model, or CGI, I don't question any of what we see ever in the film.
No,
definitely not.
And when they were working on Lord of the Rings, Weta had coined the term bigatures because their scaled models were huge. And the scale model they made of the Surprise was about 30 feet in length, and they spent 5 weeks filming the model as well.
The level of detail they went to was insane on that as well.
Yeah.
Whenever they used a different material to the real ship, like the sails, they would do calculations to make sure it still weighed exactly the same as they would have back then, so the ship still moved in the same way in the water.
Jesus Christ. Can you imagine? Westy, we're going to shoot a film on a ship. Do you want to be part? No, I don't. I don't want anything to do with it. It's fucking hell.
For their work on the film, the visual effects teams were nominated for an Oscar, but they lost out to you-know-who.
Lord of the Rings.
The King.
Return of the King, of course.
Weta, yeah.
So a huge behind-the-scenes team of Master and Commander, and the people we've mentioned there, John Culley as co-writer, Ivor Davies, Christopher Gordon, Richard Tornietti as composers, Russell Boyd as DP, and Weta Workshop, Asylum and ILM on the effects. Astonishing work all across the board.
Absolutely.
It couldn't have been any better, I don't think.
No.
The end.
The final act of Master and Commander is all smoke and oakum as the Acheron makes a return for one final battle. Before that, though, we've got a bit of time to spend with the Doc.
We do.
We do.
So after all the arguments between Jack and Stephen, they finally start getting along, and all it takes is for Stephen to get shot.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Normally the case.
After a crew member accidentally hits the dock on the deck, Stephen performs a life-saving operation on himself before getting his reward, that trip to the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah.
The words, physician heal thyself, have never been more literal, Westy.
I know, right? Yeah, I mean, this whole sequence is just incredible, isn't it? I mean, from the moment that he gets shot, because there's like an albatross, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's bad news for sailors.
Yes.
And that, again, is like this real superstitious thing, and it brought into it, and it's like, does the superstition work? Well, it did with Holland, and it did with the wind coming back, so they need to pursue that, but then they shoot the doctor because of that superstition. Again, a duality. Again, wonderful. It's just incredibly well done and incredibly well written. I mean, in reading it in the script, a bird lands and then they shoot the doctor. How the fuck are you going to do that? Believably. And then it's the authenticity of just that bit of shirt is the problem.
Yeah.
And that is wonderful. Like, I've never, ever really thought about something to be so realistic. Where you go, you're being shot. Right, if that just went straight through, it'd be fine. But there's just this bit of shirt we need to get out. But to bring him onto the islands to save himself, that's where he's always wanted to be. It's a real poetry here. And he's just like, he brings him on, I just need to stretch my legs. But you see Jack wincing, he can't do it. Are you okay? And the reaction shots from Crowe here are incredible. He's going to throw up at any moment when it boils down to it. This is what you're doing to people, but you don't want to see that. You want to see the big picture. But this is the reality of it. So well done. I believe that this was done for real. 100%. I believe Paul Bettany cut his stomach open and pulled the thing out. It just went, yeah, that actually fits that bit of material. And this whole sequence to me hits home the humanity, like I talked about with Bettany's character and Bettany's delivery. There's no strings come over the top where he's like cutting himself open, and it's not like, oh my God. It's not like that at all. That's stripping away the ego. There's nothing more you can do than cut yourself open in front of people and go, this is how vulnerable I am. This is how vulnerable we all are. But if people could see genuinely how vulnerable you are, they'll give you a chance. But you never get that chance. And it's a powerful, powerful moment if you look at it from that point of view and you go, look, I'm one of your best friends. This is how good I am at saving people. And from that moment, Jack has a completely different take on it. It's almost like got us emotional when I watched it. And that's in the writing. That's in the performances. That's just pure Peter Weir. And it's just an incredible, incredible sequence.
That guy, he's aiming for the albatross, but just taking pot shots across the deck with his musket.
No. You've ruined everything I've said.
The most heartfelt thing Westy's ever said.
I know, right?
And he is John with his joke. We know the joke's coming.
And then, during the operation, there's that other guy not holding the mirror straight. You've got one job.
I know, but that's the whole point. It's like, nobody else can stomach this but Stephen. He's the most humane person in the world and the most humane person on the ship, so you have to listen to him.
Yeah, I think with the operation, I think Bettany is just excellent.
Oh, it's
Conveys the
wonderful.
agony that Stephen's going through really well. Makes it look like a terrible thing to have to do, which obviously it is.
Yeah.
And it's an important scene, not as part of the narrative necessarily, but in terms of the relationship between Stephen and Jack, where
Yeah,
Jack
very
abandons
much.
the mission to save Stephen.
Yeah.
This finally seemed like they might actually like each other. And it's massively memorable. Like I mentioned, I've not seen this film in over 20 years, and the part I remembered most vividly was Stephen performing surgery on himself.
Yeah. I've never seen a bit of material go into another bit of material where I've been so satisfied with it fitting in the whole fucking life. Oh, it's fine. Yeah, thank fuck for that. There's no other bits in there. Oh, God, thank you. Okay.
It's just like a massive relief, isn't it?
There was a scene that was shot for around this time in the film that was taken out of the final cut. The surgeon's mate, Higgins, pretends to extract one of Stephen's worms from the gums of a sailor and tells him that it was toothache. Ugh. Stephen tells him off for not being honest and then turns and bangs his head on a low beam. Weir took it out as he thought it'd be a little bit too silly. Again, the authenticity, that would happen, right?
Surely it would have. Surely that would happen all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
It could have been played in a way where it would have felt authentic. And a little bit more humour, I wouldn't be against that, to be honest.
Yeah, just a touch.
As long as it isn't more Weevil jokes.
Yeah, when they get to the Galapagos, though, like Stephen has had this moment. He really has. Like, he's had to put up with Jack's shit all throughout the film.
Jack shit, brilliant.
Yeah, he's been shot by one of his own men, had to operate on himself because no one else is up to it. So when he gets the chance to have some proper downtime here, you think, yes, this is so well deserved for this character. You're so happy for him.
Yeah.
And it's one of those storytelling choices that I think in different hands it shouldn't work, but it really does here, because in amongst all the battles and the storms, you've got the sequence which really does get across what it must have been like to have been the first people to set foot in these places and draw pictures and capture specimens of these animals that no one has set eyes on before. And there's this wonderful sense of discovery in this sequence. Like, just that scene where they just sit next to the giant turtles and they measure their necks. You think,
it's lovely, that.
It's
a lovely moment. Yeah.
It's a lovely moment. You think that would surely be the first thing you delete, but it's so pivotal to the film.
Yeah.
And I think it's what you say, Westy, it's the humanity of it.
Yeah.
It's thinking, God, these people are just discovering stuff, and it's so great, and it's so happy for them.
It's like, did Terrence Malick direct this bit?
It's very Terrence Malick all of a sudden. And because that's so genuine, I think when Stephen sees the Acheron, it is a bit of a gut punch for him, but it's not too much, because, he has to leave the specimens behind. He doesn't get to spend as long there as he wants to, but he's still got his moment. He's still got to see them, and he's still got to spend the time investigating. So he might not be as single-minded as Jack is when it comes to fulfilling his duty, but he still realises in this moment what the right thing to do is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's great being on the island, mainly in terms of mixing up the visuals a bit. But they get there, and Stephen makes them walk 10 miles across the island.
Yes,
10 miles there, 10 miles back.
Yeah.
No chance.
Yeah.
But then it brings us right back into the overall narrative pretty expertly. Stephen's examining that bug, then a focus pull, and suddenly the Acheron's in the background. That's really good. And Stephen's good, isn't he?
It's great, but it is predictable. Like, the first time I saw it, he's like, we're going to go to the other side of the island.
Yeah.
I was like, you're going to see the Acheron, of course you are. But what's he going to do? What's he going to sacrifice? It's brilliant.
It is done really well. And when he's chasing that bug, I've never seen anyone more pleased with himself to catch a beetle. Maybe Yoko Ono.
Oh, there it is. I knew that was coming.
And this was the first feature film to ever shoot on the Galapagos Islands. And the moment Stephen sees the Acheron, that was filmed on one of the islands called Pinta. And don't know if you remember, but it was in the news a few years ago, because that was the home of Lonesome George, who was a giant tortoise, and he was the last of his subspecies, and he died when he was over 100 years old.
Wow. So who the measure?
Well, yeah, Lonesome George. He'd been there by himself for about 60 years, which is pretty lonesome.
Yeah.
And that is presumably why we get that scene where we see Stephen studying the creeper giant tortoises. One of them might be Lonesome George, who knows?
Yeah, quite
I would
possibly,
love
yeah.
it. What a fucking brilliant life, Lonesome George. That sounds great. Galapagos Island, sunny. Someone just turns up after 90 years and measures your neck and then you die. I'd love that.
So a very brief visit to the Galapagos Islands. Seems like a beautiful place, though. Short but sweet.
Oh, yeah, lovely.
Lovely.
With Stephen finding the Acheron again, the hunt is back on, and after being inspired by one of Stephen's stick insects, Jack comes up with a plan.
Nice.
In one almighty final sea battle, the Surprise pretends to be a whaling vessel, ambushes the Acheron, and takes the Phantom ship as a prize.
Yeah.
Right, lads, I know there's not a faint heart among you, so how do we find the climactic showdown?
I love it, and I think it's tribute to, again, the authenticity of this material, because on the face of it, I wouldn't have thought you can disguise a ship that convincingly. But Patrick O'Brien says you can, then I absolutely believe him, and I absolutely believe that it can happen in this film.
Yeah.
And what I really like about it is it does bring together Jack's tactical acumen along with Stephen's knowledge of nature. Like, they've always been clashing throughout the film, those two things, and now it's harmonious, and it's done just right. It's not too on the nose. It's done just right.
And he actually says it as well, though, doesn't he? Just I didn't think nature would progress warfare. It's wonderfully done.
It is. I really like that. And the preparation does have one of the few moments that makes me laugh in the film, and it's when everyone's getting into disguise and taking off the uniform, and Jack says to Killick, "Come on, you two." And it's just Killick's reaction. His attitude is basically, fuck's sake, do I have to? I'm the chef. Yeah, so I really like that. Just really nicely judged comic moment. And then when Jack gives his speech before they go into battle, I'll admit there's a lot of technical detail in there that I don't quite understand, but Crowe sells it. Like,
100%,
no one gives an inspirational battle speech like Russell Crowe does. By the end, I'm practically shouting huzzah along with the rest of them. And then you get that bit, let fly, and the music kicks in, and the cannons are blowing the shit out of everything. And I love that shot of the mast falling into the sea. It's great stuff.
Yeah. Finally lets his hair down.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
Well, again, disguising his ship as something that Thomas Cochrane did in real life. But here, they changed the name to the Siren,
Yes.
as in, like, the mythical creatures that would lure in sailors.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
the most subtle fake name, is it?
No.
Not at all. Yeah, it was so beautifully done, though, how quickly they did that. It's taken me 5 weeks to paint me sitting room.
And the percussive music in the score when we're building to the battle is brilliant. It's like these low beating drums, like bum bum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sounds like the T-1000's about to turn up.
imagine. That'd be fucking great.
Jack can have them on double bass. But once the battle starts, it's massive. I know Dan Snow, the historian, said about this battle, he's never seen a better depiction of fighting at sea,
Right.
which, coming from an expert, that's reason enough alone to watch it for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
The sound design, again, is incredible. The sound of the cannon fire and the hulls being smashed is huge. Very much reminds me of James Cameron as a sequence, which is obviously a huge compliment, as he's like a master when it comes to white-knuckle action. And this is a level approaching James Cameron, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that sea battle, that took 4 weeks to film. And because there were so many stunts, not all of them were prepared in full, and that was to reduce the risk of stuntmen being injured before filming. So the shots of the boats were also a combination of CGI, scale models, and the full-size replicas.
That is mental. If it's that
Yeah.
dangerous that you can't practice it, you might as well just film it for real. Get the cannons back in.
I'll go for when it really kicks off and it goes hand-to-hand combat and they get on there and there's just such deception. But the great thing about this film is that you don't leave that ship and you are part of it. And then when you do leave it, you are fucking terrified. Everything seems so foreign and so different, and you have to just board this other ship, and it has this kind of parody again, this duality where it's almost the same thing. But these action sequences are so visceral and so well done and so well shot. You just think, well, where's Peter Weir's weakness in this film? He hasn't got one. He can do these big action sequences that are on a wide shot. He can do them on a close-up. He can do these incredible dialogue sequences. He can do these great character moments. And again, he makes a sword fight into a character piece. If you watch this without watching the rest of the film, you go, that makes absolutely no sense. But when you watch the whole film and you know exactly who everyone is, you know exactly where you are. Loads of snidey grenades getting thrown in there. Loads of snide. Like, are you grenade in there? It starts with guns. You know, the guns run out. Again, we're talking about authenticity. We're talking about, you know, real. This is exactly what it would have been like. And how good would you be if your gun runs out? You've got one shot.
You get one shot, yeah.
And the way that they go on deck and they think, oh, that's it, it's done. And there's just these great moments where it's just you don't trust anybody. There's a real level of anxiety, but these whole action sequences are fucking fantastic, where you kind of like totally believe it, and it's so well edited that I can't even begin, because the editing in this film is second to none. Look at the amount of shots that are put into these. It's just, you've got a low shot of people running over the camera, you've got like lots of swipes, you've got lots of close-ups, you've got lots of wides, you've got lots of, you don't know what's going on, but you know what's going on, and it's just such a joy to watch.
Yeah, it is. I do enjoy a good swashbuckling cutlass duel.
Don't we all?
Although, I'm not sure how the Acheron crew managed to orchestrate everyone playing dead so quickly. And even worse, why did the Surprise crew fall for it? Everyone dead. There's about 200 of them, and Alan's just like, well, the job's done, sir. Especially when the Surprise have just pulled this ruse themselves.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Because they're called the Surprise, but they get surprised. Surprise, surprise.
Well, yeah, but then Jack goes below deck, and he falls for it again with the captain. He's dead, he has a sword.
He does, yeah.
Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies.
Yeah, but he gets stabbed as well, doesn't he? He's like, I think the French horn is a little bit on the nose. I've got to say the French horn is a little bit too much. You never ever cut to the baddie's boat. You never see that. So it's just so beautiful to go on there and go, oh, they're the same. We're all humans. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, the cinematography is still brilliant. And the editing, like you say, Westy, all the quick cuts and the handheld camera work.
Brilliant.
It feels like absolute carnage, but it's always really clear what's going on as well. Just great filmmaking for me. And there's at least 2 Wilhelm screams in there, obviously.
Again, it's the realism of it. I love the fact that there's barely any room to move, so you don't have any of that kind of OTT fancy sort choreography. It's literally just hacking and slashing away at whoever's near to you. I love seeing Stephen get stuck in there. Higgins, the assistant surgeon, I love that little touch where he sticks his finger in the cannon trigger to stop going off.
Like Lethal Weapon, isn't it?
Very much like that, yeah. And I love that bit with Blakeney when the ships are so close and they're in this battle to be the first to get the cannons ready to fire, and they're right up against each other.
Yeah,
I love that bit as well.
And then it's the denouement. After it's all done, Pullings takes command of the Acheron to take it back to port, but then we find out the captain of the Acheron is still alive, shock horror, and the Surprise is back in pursuit to the strains of one final duet from Jack and Steve.
Yeah.
A good way to wrap things up?
I think it is. I think it's like the Lord Nelson scene all over again. It's just the lads getting together, having a jamming session.
Jamming session.
Jamming session, here we go.
Yeah.
This is why people assumed there was going to be a sequel, because it's, right, off we go again, next mission, let's catch them. But it's because these two were so good together, you do want to see them again.
Yeah.
And I think ending it like this, I think it got people's hopes up. Oh, there's going to be another one of these.
Yeah, I guess the point is that the adventure never ends for these guys, and that's fine, but I don't feel massively satisfied by the way it ends, to be honest. I mean, if it was a new mission, they get new orders, and they're like, here we go again, get the fiddle out, great. But with them still pursuing the Acheron,
Get your fiddle out.
they're still where they were at the start. It just feels like the story isn't finished for me.
Right, okay.
Is this just their lives from now on, chasing the ship forever? The final shot's really cool, though, that wide shot of the Surprise turning
you
about.
see it just on the horizon.
Brilliant, that.
I think it's a wonderful way to end the film, and I was completely satisfied by it. There's so many subtle movements in this, in that I would have loved more from the French captain. He's in remorse. He hands it over, and he's just like looking down. He's like, oh, for fuck's sake. That's definitely that he's got no blood in his hands. There's nothing.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell he's just handing that sword over. But it's the way that they change the instruments that really hit home with me, is that they're not following the score anymore. And Stephen actually picks the cello up and plays it like a bass, and he's like,
does, yeah.
and then they play the violin and he plays it like a guitar, and they're playing it in a different way, and they're just like, they understand each other.
Very nice.
And they're not sticking to the rules anymore.
The jamming.
Yeah, well, the best way to have your donut. But it's just this real understanding, and I got that because these are classical instruments, and to turn them into something new. And for me, it was like, this story's going on to something else, and they understand each other, and I felt really safe at the end of the film. And for me, that was incredibly satisfying, and a really, really good way to end the film.
In that music that they're playing at the end, that's Boccherini's String Quintet in C major, and they used this piece because it gets mentioned by the characters in one of the novels, the third one, which is called HMS Surprise.
Yeah, always going back to the novels. But yeah, I agree, Westy. I also like how they start strumming their instruments like guitars and how they're in sync.
Yeah.
And finally, Jack's bonnet pays off. He looks like David Sean Hubbins from Spinal Tap on that guitar.
Just want big bottoms and then on the way.
And with that final jamming session, the chase continues. The story might not be done, but the film is.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and I love that. You can play that in your head long after the credits roll.
Reception and awards.
An epic behind-the-scenes story, and after it was all done, Master and Commander released on the 14th of November 2003. How did it do? Well, our resident statistician, Midshipman Matt, has the info. So, let fly, Matt.
Let fly, here we go. So, on a budget of $150 million, Master and Commander grossed $211.6 million on release. It was nominated for 10 Oscars, as we've talked about, winning 2, which was Richard King for Best Sound Design and Russell Boyd for Best Cinematography, and the other 8, as you guess, all won by Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Wow.
Yeah, the studio had talked about sequels, but those plans were scrapped with a disappointing box office return. And as for the critics, Roger Ebert, how did he rate Master and Commander, do we think?
I would say full marks for me.
Yeah, I reckon this would be something he really loved.
Yeah.
You're right, it was the full whack from Admiral Rog.
Yeah.
4 stars out of 4, and he said, it recreates the world of the British Navy circa 1805 with such detail and intensity that the sea battles become stages for personality and character. It achieves the epic without losing sight of the human.
He said everything we've said, and it's taken us 3 hours.
Yeah. That's why he's the most famous critic of the last 50 years.
And he probably got paid more than us as well.
Exactly.
Christopher Hitchens, though, gave a very mixed review. He said, the action lives up to its fictional and actual inspiration. However, any cinematic adaptation of O'Brien must stand or fall by its success in representing Dr. Stephen Maturin. On this, the film doesn't even fall, let alone stand. It skips the whole project.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, okay.
He's referring, I think, to the film not going into the fact, like we talked about, that Stephen's also a spy for England.
Right, okay.
I'm not sure there's time for that, though.
There's no space for that
There's
whatsoever.
no time for that.
Not at all.
In the sequels, they would have done that, I would imagine.
Absolutely, that's where I think the sequels would have gone, yeah.
Yeah, to end this film on that last line is like the bird is flightless. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
enough.
And writing in the San Francisco Chronicle, Mick LaSalle said, "The friendship of the captain and the doctor seems schematic, as if all the positive traits an individual could have were divided equally between these two guys. Their interaction is reminiscent of the Star Trek characters 4 or 5 movies down the line."
Oh, wow.
They're just slapping the face for you. Star Trek 5? Anything but 5. It's definitely not as bad as that.
I'll take your word for it.
Shatner punches God in the face in Star Trek 5.
Well,
Wow, I'm in.
yeah, I'm watching that tonight.
Yeah.
There is maybe one argument too many between Stephen and Jack, but the film recovers from it, for me.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. That's not a barometer to judge the film. Missed the point there, I think.
And then today on Rotten Tomatoes, Master and Commander has a critics' approval rating of 85% and 80% from audiences. And on IMDb, it currently sits with a rating of 7.5 out of 10.
Oh, big.
It is well thought of today, still popular, I think.
Really is.
So the response to Master and Commander was mixed on its release, a bit of a box office flop, but some success at the Oscars, fairly popular with critics, and over time the film's grown in stature and seems to have found an audience in recent years.
Yeah,
Definitely.
really has, yeah. It's one of those. Has legs.
Sea legs.
See, like,
Sequels and influence.
Sequels to Master and Commander were considered, but like we mentioned, those box office returns led to the studio halting any plans in their tracks. Would you like to have seen a sequel?
I think I would have to see where else they could have taken these characters.
I don't think so. No, I'm very, very happy with how this ends. I mean, it just has such a level of detail that I don't know they could do it again. It would have been detriment to the first film, and it would have just maybe seemed a little bit tired.
Right.
Yeah, there are 20 books in the Aubrey Maturin series, so there's plenty of source material to get into.
Yeah.
And the lead characters are good. I mean, if there'd been maybe a couple or a trilogy, I'd have been up for that if it like tied itself up at the end.
Yeah.
But I think it would have had to have believed it would be a trilogy, like Lord of the Rings. Had to be. I don't think you can get this kind of drive back to a sequel.
I agree. You need to have an end point, don't you?
Yeah, I think this end point is exactly where it needs to be.
Well, there was a push for sequel in 2010. There seemed to be a lot of traction online and fans on social media trying to get the point across that a sequel should be made. And Russell Crowe responded to this on Twitter, and he said, "If you want a Master and Commander sequel, I suggest you email Tom Rothman at Fox and let him know your thoughts."
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
I bet Rothman was loving that. Inundated with emails from furious Master and Commander fans. Nothing has came of the sequel talk, though. Peter Weir later said, "I tend to like to do one film. It was a fascinating experience, but do I need to do it again? I don't think so."
No, I don't think Peter Weir's ever made a sequel, has he?
No, he
I don't
hasn't.
think that's his style at all.
Ah, fair enough.
So it looks like that's that. How about the film's legacy, though? Did it have an influence?
I think its legacy is the fact that, in a way, it has no legacy, but people wanted to have one, which is why we do get that talk of, oh, if this had had a sequel, can we get a sequel? You know, we got 9 Pirates of the Caribbean films, or however many there were, and we didn't get one sequel to this. So, in that sense, I think it still feels underappreciated, and it feels like it was the last of its kind, like an adventure film, but more serious, aimed at adults and not at a younger audience.
Yeah.
And that's how I think it's seen today, something quite distinctive that probably should have had more of an impact. And if it has an influence, I don't know if I'd say it directly, but I would group it in with something like Dunkirk or even Fury Road, stuff that was done practically. Films that went, no, we're going to do this as practically in camera as much as we can. And that's where I'd kind of group this.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I don't think the film was big enough to have much of an influence, unfortunately. It's definitely found more of an audience over the years, and deservedly so, because it does lots of things well. So I think hopefully its influence might be yet to come on filmmakers. I think firstly, it's a very high-quality piece of historical fiction. Like I said, historians have praised its accuracy, and the HMS Victory exhibition in Portsmouth apparently has a film showing footage of the battle scenes from Master and Commander, so they think it's realistic.
Right.
Also, I've not read the novels, but I've rarely seen an adaptation that fans of the source material praise so highly. The fans of the books generally think Weir did a great job. So any filmmaker could do a lot worse than look at Master and Commander for inspiration in how to adapt the novel.
Yeah.
I think the only sad thing is that Patrick O'Brien passed away in 2000, so never got to see the world he created realised on the big screen, unfortunately.
Wow, that's a
Oh,
shame.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame.
But yeah, a lot of learnings to be had from the filmmaking here, I think. Hopefully that will happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think there's a lot to take from this and how to just believe in a project and not care about how much it's going to make or care about what the audience is going to be. A lot of films now are just based on how much money it's going to make. Shall we do this because it's popular? And it was trounced at the box office because of Return of the King and because of...
That didn't help, yeah.
Didn't help at all. But again, I'm just really happy that I've seen this film as it is, and there isn't sequels, and it hasn't been diluted in any sense. That's exactly what people need to see from a cinematic point of view. We're not turning this into a franchise. It is what it is. The books are the franchise.
Yeah.
So there is a franchise there if you want to delve into it. Go and read the books. If you want to see it on the big screen, this is all you need.
No sequels to Master and Commander then, despite there seeming to be public interest in one, and the film probably wasn't a big enough hit to impact Hollywood generally. But we think there's still a lot to be taken from Peter Weir's film.
There's
Definitely.
so much to be taken from it. Yeah, it's such an accomplished piece of work.
All the right movies ranking.
And that is the story of Master and Commander. We're not done just yet, though.
Huzzah!
Now's the time for our summaries where we rate the film out of 10. Matt, your choice. So do you want to kick us off? Your summary and score for Master and Commander, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to tell why people adore this film and get devoted to it, because that historical accuracy and the fidelity to it is so remarkable. I can't do anything but praise Peter Weir for taking this source material and going, that's it, that's the world. I'm not putting anything in there to placate a contemporary audience who want maybe more jokes or they want a young romance story in there.
Yeah.
You want that, you've got Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going to get that in that film instead.
Yeah.
He nails the story, he nails the details, he nails the world building with such attention to the craft behind it. The only thing that stops this being an absolute all-timer for me is that I would have liked a bit more of an emotional punch at the end in some way.
Yeah.
But having said that, I really do love that old-fashioned vibe that I said at the top that this has. It does feel timeless. I love Paul Bettany in particular. I'm so glad this kind of film exists, and he did make it the way he absolutely wanted it to. And like I say, I get why people adore it. I'm just not quite there with it, but I'm still giving it a 9 out of 10.
Big score. So, well, yeah, as I've said, I hadn't seen this film since it was released at the cinema, so over 20 years. I was looking forward to watching it again, as I knew lots of people do love it, and I wasn't disappointed. A simple story that's told really effectively, two strong lead performances from Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany, brilliant cinematography, stunning sound design, costume design, production design, visual effects, exceptional filmmaking all round, really. And the person pulling all that together is Peter Weir. He clearly had a vision from reading the books that he wanted to realise on the screen, and watching the film, I think he seems to have captured that. Authenticity is clearly something he was going for.
Absolutely.
And it's as authentic a piece of period set cinema as you're going to see.
Yeah.
That alone makes it worth watching.
Yeah.
But he makes it engaging as well, and we care what's going on. I would say the tone is a touch too relentlessly serious for me. I love the groundedness, but there are very few levity breaks, and when they do come, like that Weevils gag, I'd rather they didn't.
Fair enough.
The funniest thing about the film is Russell Crowe's hair, which, I might be wrong, I'm fairly sure that's not meant to be funny.
No.
It's a film that I like rather than love, but I respect it a hell of a lot. And in total, it gets 8.5 out of 10 for me.
Oh, okay.
And Westy, to finish us off, your summary and score for Master and Commander, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very similar, and I think it's a mix of both of your opinions that has really resonated with me when I watched it, and it is a film that I really respect. It's not a film that I went, oh, well, this is incredible, and I want everyone to check it out. It feels like I want to watch it by myself, and I got a lot from that. That's good. And it's not one that I want to shout about, and that's weird, because I don't know why. I don't really want to put people onto it, because I don't want people to turn around and say I didn't like it. Because of the seriousness, because of the groundedness, because of the authenticity, people will be turned off by that. That's not something that turns me off in cinema. That's something that really resonates with me and something that I am really, really engaged in. And I've seen a lot of films, and there's a lot that I don't like, there's a lot that I love, and there's a lot that I really appreciate, and this goes in the appreciate category. And it is just wonderfully realised. It's a brilliantly rounded film, and I appreciate that people love this film, and I love that people love this film.
I love that as well.
And I, at some point, will give this a 10. I will catch up with you guys who love this film, I promise. But right now, it's a solid 8.5 for me.
Wonderful.
So now we're setting sail for the yard that's formerly known as Twitter, now X, to see what our followers think of Master and Commander.
All right.
Okay.
So John O'Brien, not sure if that's any relation to Patrick O'Brien, at Obi Obit said, glad this was voted for the podcast. 10 out of 10 for me. One of my favourites.
Yeah.
Love the cast, scenery, time setting. Wish they had managed to get the next couple of movies made. I bet he does if he wants the rights to the books.
Yeah, definitely.
Bellamy at Bellamy Nottingham said 10. It's just a great film. Gorgeous to look at and a superb cast. Came out of the cinema looking forward to the sequel that never happened.
There's a theme here, isn't there?
Yeah.
There is. Is this not good enough for you people? It's wonderful. Just enjoy it. Watch it twice.
There was a few people saying they wanted to see it turned into a Netflix series.
I mean, that would be good. I mean,
Yeah.
but I
Could
mean,
see
he would
that.
have to be executive producer and be on top of it. And whether he's capable of doing that or whether he cares about that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
And one of our patrons, Will Crawford, said, I have and always will love this movie. When I first saw it, I thought it would be stale at some points, but was absolutely enthralled. To this day, I watch Master and Commander at least twice a year and rank it in my top 10 military films. 10 out of 10.
There you are. Okay.
Will Crawford. And William, Peter Quarters.
He's going to love that.
He is. It's going to be so chuffed.
And altogether, our followers rated the film as, what do you think, out of 10?
That sounds really positive, doesn't it? I'm going to go a 9.
It's going to be a high one. I would say definitely 9 at least.
It was a touch lower, 8.5 out of 10.
8.5, okay.
Right.
All right.
So that gives Master and Commander 34.5 out of 40 in total. Did okay for itself.
Yeah.
Very
really
much.
good.
And that's it on Master and Commander. We hope you've enjoyed it and you're not thinking you don't have time for our damned hobbies.
I'll grab a cannonball and disappear.
Well, I think you have disappeared. You're sitting in the pitch black. What's going on?
My natural habitat, mate. That's the way I roll. That's how I roll.
Next time, sometimes when you want to come clean, you have to play dirty. And Matt, Westy and Luke are doing just that with Benny Blanco from the Bronx as they talk Carlito's way.
Carlito. Yeah, just for Luke's impressions. That's all.
It's going to be the Luke show, that one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, to find out more about becoming a patron, supporting what we do, and accessing our archive and bonus episodes, please visit patreon.com/alltherightmovies or click the subscribe link on Apple Podcasts.
Yes, please do.
Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of your other podcast platforms as well, as long as it's 5 stars.
Obviously. Why not?
Socially, you can keep up with all the right movies on Twitter, now X, where we are at ATRightMovies. We post threads on there that tell the stories behind classic films. Everything that we post has been said by somebody involved in the production, or it comes from 3 separate sources, the same as the research on our podcast, so you should check that right out.
Definitely.
You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/alltherightmovies. On Instagram and Threads, we are at all_the_rightmovies. On Blue Sky, we are at alltherightmovies.com. We have a Facebook movie group, which has lots of chat in there, so check that out.
It does. Yeah, get involved.
Yeah, and we have a website full of great features at alltherightmovies.com.
Definitely do.
We're all off now to commit our bodies to the deep, to be turned into corruption.
Yes.
Come back for Carlito's way, and well done, lads. Extra ration of grog for both of you. You can have mine as well.
Water down rum. I can't wait.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Huzzah!